All right, good morning. Thank you so much. We will call to order the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board for today, Friday, February 21st. To start, we will go into roll call. Adams.
Here.
Harris, absent at this time. Kenny.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Oliverio.
Here.
Ani.
Here.
Robertson, absent at this time. Stitzer, absent at this time. Van Houten.
Here.
Houghton. Thank you for the correction. You do have a quorum of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board. This time we will transition into public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or general public comment and is limited to no more than 3 minutes. It should be noted that members of the public wishing to attend the meeting may do so today either at our physical location at City Hall, or they may hear, observe, or provide public comment virtually by way of logging on to the virtual link. For the record, I do need to read this in. The link for the meeting is https://links.reno.gov/RAAB02-21-25. With that, we will turn it over to public comment at this time. Is there any public comment registered in the audience today?
We have one public comment.
Okay, public comment from
Mr. Gold.
Mr. Gold. If you'd like to speak, you can step up here. There's
This work?
perfect hot seat
Yeah.
will work just fine.
Great, thank you. Ryan Gold. I own a little burger place called Royce, a couple blocks away. I'm also with Martin Harris Construction. Speaking on the GSR arena. Martin Harris, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with us. We do a lot of community projects. We did the last Washington County School District Elementary School, Jaywood Robb. We're currently doing the Ghetto Transportation Center with Washington County School District.
About that?
All good. We did the structural,
name tags.
we did the structural retrofit of this building that we're in. So I promise we'll be okay in an earthquake. We also just did, we're currently here right now doing the top floors. So you might have seen our trailer outside. Tremendously excited about this arena project. We're estimating at peak around 600 or 700 construction jobs for 2 years on this project. Just a tremendous boon to the area. Subcontractors locally are tremendously excited about this project. And then, you know, personally, super excited to not have to drive over the hill to go to a really good concert, and the exposure that we'll have to this area with NCAA basketball events and things like that. It's just really, really exciting. Economic impacts are huge. We couldn't be more excited about this. So I just wanted to locally support this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comment. Are there any other public comments in the audience today? All right, we will transition to online. If there's anybody who would like to give public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand and you'll be given permission to speak. Seeing none at this time, we will close our public comment. We'll now transition into approval of the agenda. While we do not have our chair and vice chair appointed yet, I will be running a meeting until you get to that point. We would be looking for a motion on approval of your agenda for today, February 21st. Staff has no recommended changes.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Nettie Oliveria.
Thank you for noting for the record. Connie as our motioner, Olivia as our second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I should also note for the record, Harris and Spitzer were present at 11:02 a.m. and were encoded in the motion. Next, transitioning to item A4, this is the council liaison report. Mayor Chibi is the liaison to this board, however, could not be present today, so there is no action on this item or update. We will transition to item A5, staff liaison report.
Thank you all for being here. Brian McCardle, I'm the revitalization manager here at the city of Reno. I do want to thank you all from last Wednesday when this board was appointed. We've moved quite quickly to get a meeting in place. So thank you for bearing with us on the expediency of putting this all together. I did want to introduce the redevelopment agency team, myself, I've been here about 2.5 years. I came from a career at Edon, where I was there for about 10 years doing startups and entrepreneurial development. Here also, we have Maureen West Cuthbert, who helps this machine run and keeps the train on the rails. Thank you so much. And JP Wertz is our marketing manager. And then we have Rachel McIntyre, who is our activation coordinator. She's probably getting some much needed rest after the Western Lights Festival has taken up most of her life the last week and for the next 2 or 3 days. I did want to highlight really quickly how the importance of the redevelopment agency. I found a document from 2008 that describes some of the projects that were happening back then, before the agency sort of went dormant with the Great Recession. And some of these are pretty substantial. It was the design and beginning of construction for the AAA ballpark downtown. The redevelopment agency opened West Street Market with 80% occupancy. That is the mixed-use retail thing on West Street over there. They completed a 2007 retrack corridor study that I will mention in a bit. The development of the retrack covers where Locomotion Plaza is, that was a redevelopment agency project. They added the plaza next to Java Jungle at the time, but it is a seating area for the coffee shop there. Some streetscape improvements, working with Long's Drug at the time, who was looking to open a space right downtown. And I think the last one was, so I mentioned streetscape improvement, Java Jungle, and Basement Street property is on a new non-gaming hotel at the time. Shortly thereafter, we entered the Great Recession and things kind of went to a halt. The agency lived on for a few years, but this is our opportunity to bring it back after about 12 years, 13 years of dormancy. So I'm hoping in the future that we see here and approve some exciting projects in the future. And I hope you all are excited as well to do that. That being said, a lot of these big projects will come before this body, and you'll have an opportunity to suggest projects, to prioritize them, to help us identify our funding priorities in the future. So I'll leave it there. I do have a presentation in as one of the items, so I can go over more of that when I get there. So thank you.
Thank you. Transitioning into our business items. Item B1 is review of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board bylaws. This item is for discussion only, and Brian McCardle will give you a high-level brief overview.
Yep. Just going through the bylaws real quick. The bylaws had been amended. Brian McCardle, Revitalization Manager for the record. We had reviewed the bylaws that had been amended multiple times over the last 20 years, and we asked the Redevelopment Agency Board to adopt new bylaws with some recommended changes. As the agency stands now, the intent of the agency is to suggest projects that could be considered for the redevelopment agency to help prioritize projects, as well as to allocate funding and help us sort of direct the priorities of the agency. It is now a 9-member board. We will do staggered terms. We're recommending that we do those randomly. Some 3 members will have 2-year terms, 3 members will have 3-year terms, 3 members will have 4-year terms. After that first term rotates, everyone gets a 3-year term for the future. That is how we do it, so that everyone doesn't exit the board at the same time. We have to do a whole board reset. We do have a conflict of interest policy, so if members should disclose any conflicts of interest concerning RAB matters and recuse themselves from voting where conflicts exist. We do have a chair and a vice chair that will be nominated and elected here shortly. I believe it is a 1-year, it's a 2-year term. Membership, the chair no member may serve more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms as chairperson. They can take a year off and then they can do another 2 consecutive 1-year terms as chair. Running through this really quickly. As quorum operates, we do have a quorum is achieved by a majority of the members appointed. So we have 9 members who are appointed, so we'll need 5 people to have a quorum. And that is about it on the highlights of the bylaws. One thing I will notice is that for unexcused absences from regular meetings, sorry, I have a cold right now. within a 12-month period shall result in an automatic resignation of that member. After result in the automatic resignation of that member. So please let us know if you're going to be missing meetings. We'll keep track of that. That is an adjustment to the bylaws. Does anyone have any comments, suggestions, questions?
Mayor Adams?
Yes.
Favor item for the record, just and quick point that I think is important to have on the record. It's that the reason that these are for review only is we don't actually have power over our bylaws. These were voted on by the city council and handed to us, correct?
That is correct. If there is an area of change that this board would be interested in, that would be a future item to request of staff to bring forward. You could give your recommendations and we would bring that forward to council, RDA board for final approval. But yes, they are as is today.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Nope. All right. With that, we will transition to item B2, which is election of your officers, selection of your chair and vice chair from your current members appointed. We would be looking for a motion on this item unless there's discussion.
May I be recognized?
Yes, sir.
Favor item for the record. Understand that that Paul Klein has interest in serving the role of chair. I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion for Paul Klein to be chair from Taylor Adams, second.
Nettie Oliveria, second.
Thank you. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Chair, would you like to take over for the appointment of a vice chair?
Yes, thank you, board. Any interest in nominating a vice chair, board?
Nettie Oliveria, I would nominate Colin Robertson for the vice chair for the board.
Colin Robertson is nominated for vice chair. Do I have a second?
Favor item second.
Second from Taylor Adams. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, B3, selection of term years, new advisory board members. As staff member McCardle just said, it's chosen randomly.
Yep.
So how do you think that process will work?
Actually, I was going to pull up a randomizer on the website and I forgot to do that. We can either do it alphabetically or use a randomizer.
Could I make a suggestion to the board if there's interest? Two paths that you can move forward. If anyone has an interest in serving a particular term, these will be 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year terms pursuant to the current bylaws. Your path forward, whether it be staff can put these into a randomizer, but the draw will let you know where you land unless you have a particular interest in serving a period of time based off of commitments or otherwise.
Kurt Stitzer, I'd personally prefer to start with a 2-year term if possible. Is there any interest in the 4-year term? Let's see it through the long haul.
I'll do it.
4 years, okay.
I will too.
Okay,
Nettie.
Mike Van Houten, I'm fine with the 3-year term.
okay. They're filling in.
Michael Plotty, same 3-year.
Threes, okay. Jay, what are you thinking online?
I'm good with 2 years. I like other people's ideas every 2 years.
Here's,
Okay.
I'm fine with 2 or 3, so whatever.
Okay, so I think there's one more slot for 4 and one for 3.
Kurt, how long were you on
Put
before?
Colin down for
Kurt.
the 4.
How long was I on the board before?
Yeah,
I haven't.
when we were all together.
I was only on the board for maybe a year or so, and it
That's
was
what I thought.
pretty, at the tail end of it, nothing was happening, and
Yeah.
So
That's what I
for the
thought
record,
was
just
about a year.
can you read that out?
Yes, sir. So I will.
and all of a sudden it just stopped happening.
I'll recount. For the record, I'm showing Stitzer for a 2-year term, Adams for a 4-year term, Oliverio for a 4-year term, Pawnee and Van Houten for 3-year terms, Kenny for a 2-year term, Harris 2-year term, Robertson 4-year term, Klein 3-year term.
Sounds right. Sounds good, everybody? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the selection of member terms?
Taylor Adams, motion to approve.
On second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Selection of terms has been made. B4, approval of future meeting agenda or meeting schedule. So I know there was a preference. We have to stay off Wednesdays because it might coincide with city council meetings. There's also an interest of having the earlier in the month so that they can use the business of this meeting for council meetings. Taylor had expressed some interest in avoiding Fridays, or at least Friday afternoons. What does the board think about Mondays?
I'm available Mondays or Thursdays. Tuesdays are personally challenging for me, but I can always reconfigure schedule if it works better for the majority of the board. But Mondays or Thursdays are fine with me.
Okay, what do you think, Mike?
I have a lot of flexibility with my job, so, you know, whatever the majority selects, I can probably go with. Mondays are great for me.
Mondays work best for me.
Nettie?
Monday's good.
Jay, are Mondays okay?
Mondays would be best for me.
Earlier in the day would be best for me, but Monday, any day of the week is fine.
So,
Monday mornings are always kind of a junk show.
perhaps we could try for the Monday 9 to 12 block.
I was thinking later in the day if possible. Just because Monday mornings seem to just blow up.
Like 11?
Or, yeah, I guess we could.
Yeah, that would be
Continue the 11.
fine.
Okay, yeah, that works. So we'll look at a schedule, Mondays in that mid-morning block. And, staff, are you thinking we would want to meet again in 2 weeks or monthly? I know there's a lot of business.
Yeah, Brian McCardle for the record. I would recommend we meet again in 2 weeks. We still have a lot of business that will be coming in front of this advisory board and the redevelopment board. And then maybe do the beginning of every month. And our plan would be to bring before the redevelopment agency board, the items shown here a month after that.
Okay.
So to get into a cadence, much like the plan position.
Taylor, as the record, can we add to that, so long as there's work to do? Because recognize there's a backlog to work through in the short, sort of on the front end, but as we get through that, there may be less of a need to meet on a monthly basis. So I would just say if we could add to that motion, to that item, as long as we have work to do.
And Mike Van Hout, for the record, I just have a risk management conference in Vegas from the 15th to the 20th of March that I have to carve out for that.
Okay, so I think.
I'm gone the week of the 10th through the 14th. So if we're trying for 2 weeks, are we thinking Monday the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll look for Mondays, mid-morning block around this time, 11 a.m. start. And eyeing the next meeting being March 3rd. Of course, we'll need some flexibility depending on staff's availability and the ability to show quorum. This is an action item. Seems to me to be more flexible.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I of course defer to the attorneys. I don't believe that staff needs formal action on this based off of the direction we've gotten. I think we know how to proceed.
Yeah.
So I think you can
Yeah.
move
Okay.
forward to your next one.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That's through most of our business. The next few items are presentations and discussion, so I'll turn it over for B5 and B6 to staff to present on today's business. Great.
Yeah. Thank you. So Brian McCardle, Revitalization Manager. I wanted to give a presentation. This is a presentation I gave to the Redevelopment Agency Board a few months ago, explaining some of the activities that are being done by our team as well as the Redevelopment Agency as it comes back. Highlights of the programs we have and a brief summary of history of redevelopment in the area. And, you know, a lot of this is supported by the items, the RDA status report and the participation program that is currently listed on the website. But if I could just, we'll give a brief summary of where we're at and where we're going. So when I came over here from EDON, everyone was a bit confused as to, you know, my title is revitalization, running redevelopment, with, you know, the city does have a Office of Economic Development is the formal title. So we had to get our nomenclature correct on what is economic development, what is redevelopment, what is revitalization. Additionally, what is activation and placemaking? That often gets confused. And so economic development at its core is the strength of our local economy, making sure we're creating jobs, wages, have industry clusters and sectors. It's the overall health of our economy. Redevelopment is the things you can touch and feel. It is focusing on the removal of blight, making sure we're improving the economic base by building new things, improving parks, plazas, things like that. And overall capital improvements, these can be streets, infrastructure, things like that. And the last one is revitalization. That's where I say where all the soft skills and hard skills come together to really overall increase the quality of life for the area. We want people to truly love this place and the investments being made. Not only increase vibrancy, but make this place an in-demand place where people want to move, where companies want to relocate, where investors and developers want to place their time and their money. And I'll just say with activation and placemaking, placemaking is when you design a space to be utilized for people. Activation is when you bring life to that space intentionally. And so some of the times we're doing placemaking, we focus on redesigning parks and plazas. Activation is what you're seeing downtown right now with the Western Lights Festival, which is special events, activities, gatherings, things like that. When I joined, I had like a David Letterman top 10 items that we wanted to focus on. And one of those is to get creative, and that is creative financing. At the time, no one was really talking about tax increment financing. There was some curiosity around new market tax credits, which are quite complicated. There are agencies that are registered in the state of Nevada that can do new market tax credits, but we really wanted to take over and look at how we leverage tax increment financing to facilitate development. So that's one part, getting creative. Second one is the Goldilocks zone. I tell everyone Reno is truly in the Goldilocks zone. It is the right size, the right sort of right size, everything going for it. People truly love this place. The outdoor activity, it's a 15-minute town. We have everything going for us. Quite often, a lot of people don't hear that. I always tell people to go and talk to someone who has recently moved here and have them describe this area. And often they will be more complimentary of our area than people who have lived here for 10 years or longer. They say that we're welcoming, that we're super nice. They love living here. It's just a gem. And we need to recognize that. We need to leverage that in our community. Believe not leave is sort of retaining talent. We are a college town. Reno is Nevada's college town. And we want to make sure that we're keeping people here and we're thriving as a community. Next one is nothing about us without us, is making sure that we're always gathering people's input, going out to the community and making sure that we're building a community that they have a part in the process and that they see that their vision is coming to life. World class, I do believe that sort of Reno and Nevada has an opportunity to be really a truly world-class city. Charting a course and painting a picture is that people need to know what direction we're going and why. And we're starting to put some things together now with also a rebrand that will be mentioned here in a bit to really show people that you should be able to walk down the street and ask anybody what's going on. They should be able to tell you the overall civic story of where we're going and why. I'll skip to eat the elephant. Everyone thinks that, if we can just get Harrah's back online, everything will be fine. Or if, something else. And I always say this isn't a sci-fi movie. There's no monoliths, silver bullets, or magic wands that we can find that will solve all of our problems overnight. Change will be so incremental that probably some people won't even notice the changes until 10 years later, where they look around and they go, that's kind of nice around here. What happened? And it's little small things over time. So I say it's eat the elephant. Our urban areas should be mixed use, mixed income, multicultural, and multi-generational. Interesting thing happening in urban environments is that you have this horseshoe effect where you have empty nester retirees choosing to sell their homes and move into apartments in dense urban areas. And you have recent graduates, knowledge workers, tech workers that are also looking for the exact same thing. And they both are craving the same quality of life. They want to be able to ditch their cars, to walk to coffee shops, to go out to restaurants. So you have this interesting thing happening where you have young 30-somethings as well as empty nester retirees, and they're all mingling together. And then you have a mix of affordable housing, attainable housing, housing across the spectrum, and that is something we need to focus on. Innovation and vibrancy, just making sure that we have a strong, knowledge base down here, leveraging the university. And the last one I'll mention is 5 birds, 1 stone, and I think that is possibly the most important one. Downtown Reno, so when the Redevelopment Agency was created in 1983, they did a census, and the census had 3,900 people living in downtown Reno. 41 years later, when we did the placemaking study, that number was 4,700 people. And so in 41 years, we grew 900 residents in our downtown over 41 years. A lot of people want to see more economic activity downtown. They want to see more businesses. The challenge is if we cram new businesses into our downtown environment right now, they will not be successful because we do not have the foot traffic. Downtown's operated by three types of people. You have residents, you have workers, and you have visitors. Our visitors are fairly flat. It hasn't been a great year, but that was only because people went crazy after the pandemic and just traveled like crazy, pent up demand. So tourism is a bit flat. Workers all went home during the pandemic, but we didn't really have that much of an office environment. Most of that is just south of the river right here, but that hasn't grown much either. And we've had practically zero residential growth in the area. And so if we can grow residential growth, it will solve a lot of our problems. It will bring people back downtown. It will make our streets safer and more comfortable. It will bring vibrancy to the area. It'll bring events and activities, and it'll support the businesses that want to relocate down here. And so adding more residents is possibly one of the most impactful things that we can do to get our urban environment back online. So the first thing we did is this was started just before I joined, but it was the Virginia Street placemaking study. And we wanted to look at the conditions of downtown. I will mention that in 2017, we did the downtown action plan. It is still a really good action plan. All the plans for the last 20 years have said the exact same things. Invest along the river, bring more people into downtown, focus on your infill sites, move the university closer into downtown. They all say the same thing. And so when people say we need a plan, I say, you know what, all the plans have said the exact same thing. The downtown action plan is still the plan that we're operating off of. And it helped us create the downtown business improvement district, which is run by the Downtown Reno Partnership. So that was one of the implementation items for that. Following that, we still really wanted to figure out why Virginia Street is lagging. And so we invited the international firm GEL from Amsterdam, I believe they are. And they came in and they surveyed the site. And what they found is that Virginia Street really has three character areas. Up towards the university and the freeway, you have students living up there. We have the Gateway Project, and we have the access to the freeway that does have some value. In the center there is our entertainment core. We're starting to add more residents in that entertainment core. And then down south towards the river is really, not only is it our office commercial district, it is our cultural, it's our civic center because we have the city hall as well as the county courthouse. But then we have museums, we have amphitheaters, the Children's Museum, Museum of Art, Performing Arts Center, all those things. And so right in that section is really the cultural civic center as well as a lot of amenities. But the most fascinating thing we found from that report, I stuck. There we go. The most shocking thing is that it says 70%, it's actually 72% of Virginia Street from the university to Midtown is dead, empty, or vacant facades. And that is the true challenge of what we're facing in our downtown core. It's empty parking lots, it's vacant buildings. And one thing they said here is, they said, you know, it can make even the shortest walk feel very uncomfortable when there's nothing there and no one around. And this is kind of what we were talking about, is two things here: blank walls, no activation, but you also notice there's no one else on the street. And so when people say I don't go downtown, I don't go downtown because it's unsafe. I ask the question, is it truly unsafe or do you feel unsafe? It is a perception issue. And this is one of the things about getting more residents downtown, is that there's more people in the streets. People just feel more at ease to move around. But we need to give them more opportunities to engage in the public realm. This is downtown San Jose. Our DRP, Downtown Reno Partnership Director, Alex Statinsky, is now running the Downtown Partnership in San Jose. But this is actually a parking garage where they moved the parking stalls in the parking garage and made micro retail units. Our sidewalks in our downtown are certainly wide enough to add outdoor seating, landscaping. This street isn't closed off. It's a bit of a soft street where you still have vehicle access. You can still use it for special events. One of the biggest things we heard from them, our consultant, is shade is one of the biggest factors of how people utilize our local spaces. Believe Plaza, we have a hard time giving it away, let alone we can't even pay people to use it because it's a big concrete space and it's hot in the middle of the summertime. So everyone wants to go to McKinley because of the McKinley Arts Center, because of the big trees and canopy, and the nice grass, as well as Idlewild Park, just because the water features and things like that. So we need to do a lot of improvements to our public spaces to make them softer to use. Geel, their number one recommendation was to focus on Locomotion Plaza, which is the retrack lid in between Whitney Peak and El Dorado. That was a recommendation, and fortunately, with the ARPA funds that we received, council gave us the ability to not only move on to the next phase, but to start the design and construction of Locomotion Plaza. And I'm happy to say that once Western Lights is over, Locomotion Plaza will go into construction. And it's pretty much gonna look exactly how it does here, except for those big expensive shade structures. We didn't have it in the budget to add those. Those came in about $500,000 a piece. But we are getting 6 shipping containers. All of the plaza is movable exterior furniture. The furniture will be out primarily majority of the year. When a special event promoter wants to utilize the space, we pack it all up. They will actually, as part of their fee structure, pack it all up. And all the furniture will be stored in the shipping containers. The 2 in the front facing Virginia Street, those are dry bars, so vendors can come in, take their coolers, and serve any sort of retail or drinks from those. And then we have the ability to possibly do a stage over the 2 shipping containers. And then there's like a food truck plaza in the back. And so now this will be a true outdoor furnished place, an outdoor, what do you call it, living room in a way, but also can still be utilized for special events. And so that will be finished by Memorial Day, just in time for our summer event series that I'll mention in a bit. Can I just go?
I think it goes.
Who's the contractor for that project?
Our Public Works Department is working on it. I think it's Arcadis.
Yeah, it's just the.
Designer,
Yeah.
the construction manager. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
I apologize.
Any questions or anything on this point as they transition slides?
No question. May I be recognized? Taylor Evans for the record. I can't help but notice the per hour cost of our meetings seems to be increasing dramatically with some of the people that are here with us today and they're with us online. Perhaps when we finish this item, can we jump forward to see the sort of, I guess, optimize the meeting for the folks that are with us and then come back and catch item B6 sort of after we talk through the tax increment financing items?
No objection. Yeah, so the particular item,
We'd be, basically, I think we're on B5 now. We'd be coming back to talk about B6 after we did the tax increment finance. We just assuming everybody that's with us is really here for those items, might jump to those in case the other comes back.
yeah, does anybody have a problem with that? Okay,
Great suggestion.
yeah, well, so what we'll do is, are
Um,
you at a place that you want to wrap up or you want to finish there and then we'll go to C1?
We'll finish there. I think it helps frame a lot of the redevelopment agency and some of the tools we're gonna be discussing later in the conversation. Item B6 should be very short. It's just a brief update on rebranding. And a second part of Geel's study was to redesign the streetscape. So the last time we did a streetscape redesign in downtown Reno was 1996. That's how we got the stamped concrete, the candy cane lights, and I apologize for the maroon accents that everyone isn't too fond of. This is where this project is. We haven't gone to 30% design. But hopefully this is an item that the redevelopment agency can address in the future. And then the third item that they thought of was to focus on redesigning Believe Plaza. To adding more functions and possibly a retail component. Again. What do you always say? The third time, fourth time you hear something in the city, it's
4 times.
4 times.
4 times in your career. That's how you know you've gotten it done.
Following up the placemaking study with the ARPA funds, it was what can we do next? And really it was to finally focus on our river, which is the greatest asset we have here, other than our great university. All right. A lot of cities have gone about deindustrializing their rivers. A lot of Midwest cities, they put a lot of dirty uses and manufacturing along their rivers. We're no different. We have waste management along our river and some of the forestry industrial down there. The one on the left is Fort Wayne, Indiana, very similar size to Reno. They have gone and done a very similar project. San Antonio is in the bottom left. I hate referencing San Antonio because it's canal, it's a wastewater canal project and not truly a river. But everyone's like, you like San Antonio? That's what you're talking about? I'm like, no. But the one here is Columbus, Ohio. This is $1 billion project, but they have done a mile's worth of river improvements and it's magnificent.
sweet.
It's magnificent.
It's sweet.
But Cincinnati has done a project like this as well. And so, you know, that is the goal. I think we're a little bit late to the party in how we focus on our river, and that's what this plan was addressed to do. Just like Virginia Street, we noticed that our river has 4 character areas. In the Verdi area, it's very rural. In the area in yellow is Reno West. There's a lot of single-family homes whose backyards are the river. So it's very hard for us to reclaim the space and put a river path through their backyards. But there could be an opportunity to work with not only Tumwa, but the railroad to do some pedestrian bridges on the north side so that you would never have to leave the river going all the way to at least Mayberry Park at the moment, but eventually Verdi. Where you could truly, I have 2 kids and it's very hard when you get to Chrissy Collin Park and have to go on to Mayberry with cars flying 50 miles an hour, and that's our river bike path. Downtown is mostly been improved with the Riverwalk district. Reno East is probably the most challenging area. The river is in disrepair at the moment, but it's the least utilized area as well. What I say is there's no activity node to actually, for people to go that section. And so hopefully if there's an arena down there in the future or Top Golf or something, it gives more reasons to go along that river. It increases utilization, and making investments in that section will be obvious once people are utilizing it more. We got 30,000 points of engagement on this study. People gave us thumbs up, thumbs down. They commented on what they loved about the river, what they didn't like. One of those things that we learned that there were a lot of dams in our river that just got dismantled in place. And so there's rebar and concrete just sticking up all throughout our river. We didn't actually know that until we worked with the county on this study to identify some of those issues. And so 30,000 points, it gave us great details. One of the things that we can focus on in the future, eventually we would recommend through the redevelopment agency that we do design standards for a river. Approving setbacks, approving materials and lighting, making sure that we're moving parking infrastructure to the backside, as well as making sure buildings are perpendicular so that everyone has a line of sight to the river. The thing after that is in those 4 character areas, we're going to need new path design. We want to get to a point when somebody enters the river, whether they decide to go east or west, it is a unified experience, and they feel that someone really is paying attention and curating an entire experience. So some of the sections on the river, especially during along Riverside Drive, we get moms and strollers, bikers, walkers, and it might require 2 paths as well as the street there in the future. But we have gone to design on this cantilever trail behind the Auto Museum. The trail is currently falling into the river, and so we received some ARPA funds and we're redesigning that cantilevered section right now. And the last one is our consultant, Dig Studios, again, recommended that we focus on Believe Plaza redesign. Keeping it as a usable space for events, but also adding shade, landscaping, making it a true gem of our downtown. And then the second one was redesigning Believe Plaza. Believe Plaza is hard to activate at the moment. Again, it's a hard space. With some redesign, we feel we can bring it back to life. Yes.
Nadia Oliverio, would it be possible to go back and look at the original design for Believe Plaza, which included shade?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to look at that before spending more money to redesign?
Absolutely. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, when we do eventually go out to redesign Believe Plaza, this is just a conceptual, we'll likely look at all past designs and get input from those to make a direction, to choose a direction going forward. Another thing we did is the restore program. There is I will say this bluntly, there is a lack of pride in our downtown by the property owners and business owners. That's just fact. That is why we have 72% vacant and active facades. It is very hard for us. Some people think the city can just decide what we should do with these properties or force people to do something. They have property rights. And so what we have decided to do is incentivize them to move, as well as disincentivize them by focusing more on code enforcement. And so we took $1 million in ARPA funds and we did the restore program. And it is $50,000 in matching funds for interior improvements. If somebody's moving a restaurant in, has to do HVAC and grease interceptors and all that stuff, we can help with that. If the building's windows are broken and the paint's peeling and they want to do that, we can match them up to $50,000 as well. And we had 32 properties take us up on that offer. 13 of those were new businesses. And so this is Shin's Tavern on the left. They just wanted $1,000 to repaint their building. And we said, that's not a problem. They go, actually, it's $1,000 total. If it's matching funds, we just need $500. So these are like those tactical improvements we can do to improve the built environment. The one in the middle is where Sleeve Brewing and Daily Bagel is. This is actually a building that the redevelopment agency purchased over 20 years ago from the police or fire. This is an old fire station. But they repainted the building and added some outside seating. And then the two on the right, this is the Morris Burner Hotel. That is actually going under construction right now with new glass windows, floor to ceiling glass windows on the front. And the one on the bottom right is Birdies. If anyone's been to the new Birdies downtown, it's an indoor miniature golf course. That is the rendering that they submitted to us when they requested those funds. And we have about 4 more projects still coming online. Switching gears, and I'll wrap it up here fairly quickly, is how we re-energize the redevelopment agency. It's hard to summarize 41 years of plans and amendments. And so we worked with Applied Analysis and they gave us the status report, which is a very short summary of the redevelopment agency, the projects in the past, the area, all that stuff. And then we released the participation program, which is pretty much our incentive package on how we work with developers and investors on how we do public-private partnerships to, develop infill lots. But the goals of the redevelopment agency are it's a short list, but it's quite expansive. It is to attract businesses to the area. There's also to visually improve the area, remove blight, create quality housing, but also increase the growth of residents. Make sure that people can flow through the area. That includes micromobility. We are doing a parking study at the moment to figure out how we can better utilize parking as an economic driver throughout the area. Increasing and investing in public spaces. We're doing that with Locomotion Plaza. Revitalizing blighted areas, just overall enhancing the quality of life. And then I do want to recognize that we have the ability to preserve and emphasize our historic assets throughout the area. These are the 2 areas. So in the future, we'll likely be recognizing any future projects, whether they're in RDA 1, which is our downtown area, which is the area in yellow, and RDA 2, which is all the surrounding areas. RDA 2 is non-contiguous, but it includes some areas of Keystone, mainly 4th Street, Grand Sierra, Midtown, Convention Center, and then Boomtown. At the time, RDA 2 was getting drawn was when Capella was being discussed. So that was included as part of that. I think our consultant's gonna go over how tax increment works, but just so you know, how property tax works right now is that for every dollar anyone pays in property tax, the city of Reno itself gets 26 cents on the dollar. That's how it works right now. And when you create a redevelopment area, and it's passed by the legislature, is for every new dollar created, it gets put in a special bucket, the redevelopment agency, and it gets has to be reinvested in those areas. So everyone who's currently getting that property tax, the commitment is you will continue to get those funds in the future, but for any new funds, they get set aside and reinvest in the area. Yes.
A question. So when you say dollar, is it just the 26% of that dollar?
Nope, the
Or
full
the
dollar.
entire dollar? So you're sweeping
full
away from
dollar.
the counties and.
Yep, the full dollar. I say it's kind of like an investment fund. Give us the dollar. We're going to make investments throughout the area, increase the economic base, increase property taxes, and at the end of 25 years or longer, some of these have been extended. All that wealth, all that revenue creation essentially gets given back to all these agencies. That is the intent of redevelopment. These are the plans that have been done in the past, but the ones I just want to point out, 1983 is when RDA 1 was created, and 2005 is when RDA 2 was created. But going back even further, in 1969 is when the topic of redevelopment was first started. They mostly called this urban renewal back in the day. Urban renewal now kind of has a negative connotation. But the first sentence in this report says, in Reno, as in every city, downtown must change to meet today's needs, or it will abdicate its role as the heart of the city and become a lifeless semi-slum.
Hi, you guys. I just wanted to say hi.
Hi.
You're doing God's work.
So it said, every city must, abdicate its role at the heart of the city or become a lifeless semi-slum. I thought it was a big punch in the face right off the start. Something was happening in 1969, and that was across the nation. We were starting to get strip malls, the suburbanation, as well as malls. And the reason why people were freaking out in downtown Reno is that Park Lane Mall had just opened. And it took JCPenney out of downtown, it took Woolworths, it took all of our jewelers, our shoe repair, took everything out of downtown, and they were freaking out. And so even though we have still this conversation today, it's been a conversation that's happened every decade. But they created this nonprofit. It was kind of a task force by the city, and they suggested some improvements, these interesting metal globe trees along Virginia Street. It invested doing a promenade along the river, and then a footbridge from Wingfield Park to West Street Plaza. And some of these we actually received. But in 1983, the state legislature gave the ability to create redevelopment areas. And so the city took it upon itself to propose a redevelopment area, and that was RDA 1. And it does say the intent of the 1983 plan. The theme was City of Light, and it says to concentrate public improvements, balanced development, the two main axes of downtown Reno, Virginia Street and the Truckee River. And why I point that out is because a lot of people assume that the center of our downtown is the Reno Arch. I will often claim that the center of our downtown is the Truckee River and the Virginia Street Bridge. If you draw a half a mile circle from the Virginia Street Bridge, you get everything that people want in true downtown: office buildings, amphitheaters, museums, restaurants, walking paths, events and activities. They identified 5 projects in that plan. One was to turn Virginia Street into a 1 lane and do double rows of trees. Another one was to get into the mall business and open up a retail mall right along the river on Sierra Street. They actually spec'd that site and later turned into the movie theater. So the redevelopment agency did the deal on the movie theater on that exact site. There was a plan for the post office to have this glass sort of gazebo area, very French looking, called the River Room. That was proposed, and my favorite one was lasers throughout downtown. It was a City of Light theme, and that was one of them. The 6th project that was amended later was when the Harrah's auto collection was possibly going to be sold by Holiday Inn, which is an interesting story. Both the RCVA and the redevelopment agency begged them to save the cars and keep them in the area. And so I believe the deal was the redevelopment agency bought the land and RCVA built the building to keep the Harrah's collection here locally. So that was the 6th project. But in 1990, they said, you know what, we don't need just to identify projects. We need an actual agency to do this. And we need to give this agency a lot of tools and expand their oversight so that they can do any possible opportunity in the area. And so they amended that plan in 1990 to create truly the redevelopment agency and the plan that we operate on today. And it relisted the goals. I sort of highlighted those. This is the promenade along the river. Very rarely do you get a picture that looks exactly like the end product. You could have people sit in that promenade and it would probably be the exact same picture today. In the 90s, we did a bunch of plans. We did a river plan that got us the kayak park, an entertainment plan, the streetscape plan. And in 2007, we did this amazing report called the Retract Corridor Study. It's great, but we ran into the Great Recession, didn't actually utilize anything listed in this plan. But we did finish some projects. The promenade, the way the movie theater was structured is that the developer built the movie theater, the redevelopment agency will build the parking garage. And so the redevelopment agency still owns and operates the parking garage, and all the revenue from parking does support the redevelopment agency. We supported the development of the Palladio, the ballpark, the bowling stadium, and then some plazas around town like West Street Plaza. And despite not having tax increment financing, we did get some development projects both in RDA 1, Canyon Flats, and the Mod, as well as Red, R1 Apartments, and the Reno Public Market. I will say that we're getting 1,000 units in our downtown this year. Over the last 15 years, we've only gotten 700 units in downtown. So we're going to grow in 1 year what we've done in the last 15 or so. And so that is exciting. The participation program, that is the participation program is defined in the legislature as the incentive program that we offer. And we are required to list a program. Some things that will be important for this body is what makes a project eligible. It has to be within the area, or the project has to benefit the area. It has to pass the but-for test, and the but-for test is really important, but it essentially says that without the support of the redevelopment agency, but for that support, this project would never occur. So it has to pass that test because they would receive public funds or a public incentive. Project has to be prevailing wage. If it's over $100,000. And they have to list an entertainment plan.
Kurt Stitzer for the record.
Yep.
Prevailing wage requirement, do we feel like that makes other projects like unviable?
It is a concern, definitely.
I mean, for $100,000 to force an entire project to go to prevailing wage, it's not worth $100,000.
Correct. There's economies of scale. The delta between regular wage and prevailing wage is smaller than it was in years past. But that is something that they have to model into the pro formas, the prevailing wage. And so when we go in to change things, if they accept funds, it changes their entire pro forma. So we have to be conscious of that.
And that's an NRS requirement that we.
It is.
Board couldn't do anything about.
It is. We've been following Boise's Capital City Development Corporation. That's their redevelopment area. And they do all these projects, and we were really jealous. And then we found that their state has no but-for test and no prevailing wage. So, and they're probably the only state in the nation that has those two things gone, but most states do have those.
Taylor, Adams, for the record, can we back up to the but-for test?
Yes.
Just procedurally for us as we're working through items, I'm assuming the staff will have some analysis they'll bring to us where that test will, you won't be looking for us to make that test sort of subjectively at this table. You'll have data that demonstrates that threshold test has been met before we vote on anything, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
We don't have an underwriter in-house, so we will likely utilize consultants, but every deal will likely go through that process to prove the but-for test.
Thanks.
So this is a brief summary of the participation program. We formalized that restore program so we can continue to do the facade and interior support. If someone owns a piece of property and they want to redo their sidewalk, which is city owned, or redo the lights or do an improvement on their dime, we'll match them up to $200,000 for those public improvements. And last one is if it's a historic building, they will get a $25,000 bonus on top of that. Tax increment financing we'll get into. Catalyst assistance is for big projects. We will have a 5-year capital improvement plan that we'll put in front of this body. So all the infrastructure projects we're going to be doing. And last is that the RDA has the ability to buy and sell property. And that is the program. The big note here is from our projections, the redevelopment agency will have about $400 million to invest over the next 20 years. Redevelopment area 1 right now, which is downtown, doesn't have that many funds available. We're still paying off the ballpark debt, but it is out of debt next year and we'll start accumulating. RDA 2 has about $6 million in it as of last year and is starting to accumulate about 8 to 10 million a year. So RDA 2, you'll see the ability to do projects come along quite faster. 3 slides left, I promise. Our activation coordinator, Rachel McIntyre, her big thing last year, we did a plaza activation pilot program, and that allowed us to facilitate new events in downtown. That was Off the Rails concert series. That was the Dancing on the River. It was movie nights, movies on the river, Flicks on the Bricks. Thank you. And from that, we increased events downtown by 30% just in the first year through that pilot program. We had 40 new events, new unique events. Next year with ARPA funding, we're bringing it all back and we're adding 3 or 4 more. And so in addition to those, Beats and Bites will be sort of a food truck music event on Locomotion Plaza. House Party Open Air will be very similar. And then we'll close, I believe, Virginia Street to do an antique vintage antique fair to activate the street. Some of these are pictures from last year's events. But this year, Rachel had a wish list item. And their wish list item was to host a lighted art and tech festival. It is now Western Lights. The reason why I kept this here is that everything that you see downtown this weekend was very intentional. on that from Rachel's part is this is her wish list item. And so we ran another pilot program on a event pilot program, and that is Western Lights. And as it was sold, a lot of cities are doing this, Napa, Portland, Cincinnati, Berlin, they have these light events. And with our proximity to Burning Man, it's shocking that we've never done this before.
2019,
2019, yeah.
we did it.
Was it Sculpture Fest or was it something similar?
No, it was
Winter.
the Winter Light.
The Winter Lights.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it is going, it went on last night. I really encourage you to go downtown tonight and tomorrow night from 5 to 10 to experience it. It will be a new legacy event. And one of the benefits of this is our slowest time of year from tourism and activities. And so this is a new thing to help bring activity in the off season. It's my last slide. What will we all see in the future? Shortly, we will develop our five-year capital improvement plan. That is something we're working on now, along with our budget. We're currently in a parking plan review. We'll do another announcement of Restore funds. We're not going to leave Restore open all the time. We're probably going to do it as an allocated grant and open up the window, have people apply and then allocate. And then really jump into the Truckee River, what we're going to do. There's talk of a service plan, working with the county and starting to do design standards and then start building improvements along the Truckee River. And last is expanding our placemaking program. So what we're doing in Locomotion Plaza, we can do a lot of areas throughout the city. That is it.
Any questions?
Now you know as much as I.
Does everybody feel comfortable in understanding tax increments or need any other further information on that before we move into the next items? Okay, well, we'll move B6. We'll get to that after our C items so that our guests can present and ask questions and comments. So let's move over to C1 on the fundamentals of tax increment financing, TIF.
Well, let me introduce Rob Hunden, who is our consultant for the Grand Sierra Resort Review Project. Just a brief intro of Rob. I met Rob. I flew to Lansing, Michigan many years ago to take an IEDC course, which is International Economic Development Council, on redevelopment in land use. And Rob was the professor there, and I would say he and his team are the go-to people for entertainment districts and convention centers and urban areas. And it's been a pleasure to invite him to work on this project. And he's going to go through and give us a brief intro on the ins and outs of tax increment financing. I've mentioned a few things, and then get into the mechanics of how they reviewed the Grand Sierra Resort proposal.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Can you see me?
We see your picture.
See my picture. May I share my screen or may Lucas share his screen?
Rob, this is Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. I'm going to move you over as a panelist, and then that should allow you to have the opportunity to share your screen. But that means you may go away for a second, so. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just offer this to the members. Feel free to ask questions. Just say your name before for the record. And I won't have to get into organize this unless we're talking over each other, but feel free to kind of in the informality of it to conversate and ask questions as appropriate to the presenter. Sure.
Fantastic. So, let me turn on my video. All right. You can see me and you can see the shared presentation. Is that all right? Is that right? Yes, can you hear
We
me?
can't see you. We're going to change our view here so we have your slides up, but we'll change it so that side by side.
So am I controlling the
Oh,
deck?
there we go. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, hello. And I had only booked an hour for this. I have another Zoom coming up, so I will be relatively brief. But you did a great job, Brian, of covering so much of the fundamentals. So we'll move through these fairly quickly. And then my team is going to take over for the rest of it to talk about the project specifically. So now I've been moving my slides forward. Are you seeing me move the slides
Yes.
forward? Amazing. Okay, so as Brian showed you, you have 5 agency participation programs, and one of those is tax increment financing. So what the heck is TIF? So first off, it is, and I'll try not to just read these slides because I have a little more talent than that. However, it's really one of the oldest and most utilized forms of incentives that exist in the country. And the reason is it uses a concept that we talk about as the but-for concept. There are a couple of but-for concepts that we're going to talk about today, but one is that but for a new proposed project in a redevelopment district, that project would not be viable and therefore would not happen. And therefore, the incremental property taxes that would come from that project would not exist. And so the idea is if we can somehow rebate some or all of those property taxes back to a project, and that allows its financing to move forward and it's financially viable, then we get a project that we would not have had without the tool. And if we can then take those incremental property taxes that are generated because the property went from unimproved to improved, and we can rebate some or all of those back to the project that's in need, that reduces the ongoing operating expenses of that project and of course makes it easier for them to pay their bills, and therefore it's more viable. And so that's, and again, but for the project, you wouldn't have the you wouldn't have the new taxes. So it's not taking taxes away from anybody. And so that's really the purpose, is to stimulate economic development in areas where economic development and real estate development has been challenged. And sometimes this is in urban areas. Most times it's in urban areas. Sometimes it's in like rural areas. It can really be, every state has a different definition of what is available and allowed to be done. And so, but typically it's blighted in more difficult situations. And so you have very specific rules and regulations around it in the state of Nevada. And what it does, so as I mentioned, it freezes those property taxes. And so everything above the baseline, as that property is improved and reassessed at a higher level, that goes, if it's not collected by the developer, it goes back into the redevelopment kitty as the TIF district's pot of money. But if it's dedicated back to the developer, it goes back to the developer. And different entities can make different deals about how much goes back and over what period of time. So we've seen all kinds of things happen all the time. The risks are very limited. And why is that? Well, here's the other but for test. But for the project being developed, you don't get the taxes. And so if let's say you make a deal with a developer to develop a project that's super cool and they don't develop it, well, you haven't lost anything because you haven't given anything away, because what you were going to give back to them, they would have created, but there was nothing to give back. They didn't create anything. So there's not a lot of risk there for you. And by the way, the TIF financing and all of that doesn't go on the municipality's credit rating. It's a different sort of balance sheet. So that's another benefit of a TIF. So where, why, how, and has TIF been used? It's been used in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. Some states are very liberal in how much they allow it to be used and what the definitions are, and some are very strict where they only allow for, you know, the non-school portion or the city portion or whatever. As Brian was explaining, yours is a more robust version, which is very good for you in terms of the value of the incentives that you're able to provide through TIF. And why do we do it? Well, obviously, it uses the future benefit that the project's going to provide to make a project viable, or at least more viable today. And so we can use those future benefits to leverage the project getting off the ground. Now, what is the magic of TIF? The magic of TIF is that we don't do just project-specific TIFs usually. We have a whole redevelopment area, and you have 2 redevelopment areas. And in those areas, we have a rising tide that lifts all boats, right? So let's say we build a really kick-butt project somewhere, and the surrounding parcels maybe are also a little forlorn or under improved and things like that. Well, if you have a mansion go up next to your raggedy shack next door, all of a sudden your raggedy shack's worth a lot more money, right? And so what you have is this rising tide that lifts all boats. So we have increment that is occurring over their baseline of the surrounding properties. And as their increment increases, even though they didn't get an incentive deal, that excess increment goes into the redevelopment kitty as well. And so that's why TIF districts can be so powerful, is because you have catalytic projects that are getting some incentives, right? But they are also raising the tide that is lifting up the values of everything around it. And so that increment then helps make the TIF district more powerful and gives you more leverage to leverage more firepower to leverage more projects. So this is a graphical interpretation of TIF, similar to the one that Brian had. His was a little more colorful than ours, but these are our company colors, so we're going to go with that. And so essentially you see here, let's say the baseline is $1,000, the property is improved, and so the incremental taxes go up, and they are, you know, going up to, say, and this is covered up on my screen, $3,000. And so over that period, that original baseline amount is still going to the general fund kitty where it always went, but that increment over that baseline is going back to either the redevelopment district, if it's not part of an incentive deal, or if you've dedicated an incentive deal back to a property owner, then they get their taxes rebated in part or in full based on whatever deal you've come up with them. And so we've done these all over the country, and each place does them a little differently. And yours is a pay-as-you-go. In some places, you can monetize that value up front, but not here. So here it's a pay-as-you-go. And so those benefits accrue over time to the property owner and developer. And so I was just going to give you some visual examples of sort of a rural situation around a youth sports complex in Indiana, where they have TIF and they have some other tools and whatnot. And you can see here that you have a lot of unimproved area that's farmland, and then baseball fields and soccer fields and such. And then, but that generates, so we call it the hero and the halo. So there's this hero project that generates about 5 million visitors a year. And so now they want to take advantage of that and have a walkable retail restaurant district, a minor league soccer stadium, an indoor ice facility, and residential and retail restaurant entertainment. And that is benefiting, of course, from the hero project that's generating a lot of tourism. But also then if they are using TIF, like the baseline is just the bare ground. And so when they develop all of this mixed use vertical development, they'll be creating value, and that value can be recycled back into the district to help with the fact that vertical development in suburban places, as an example, is very difficult and not feasible versus surface parking. So if we want dense walkable, then we've got to spend a few more bucks to do that. And so TIF can be really helpful in situations like those. And the same applies for downtown Reno. And so this is just another example here in Milwaukee with the Milwaukee Bucks Deer District, which is another project that we've worked on. So you've got that hero project in the middle making things happen, but it's benefiting the neighborhood around, and that can help with the real estate taxes that are generated to sort of lift all boats. So as Brian was talking about, we have program eligibility requirements. It's got to pass the but-for test. And in this case, your but-for test is, but for the incentives, the project wouldn't be viable. And so the answer is yes. We already talked about prevailing wage, so that could be a little bit of a challenge, but it is what it is. We can't change that. And then the location must be in a redevelopment area. That must prove a benefit. And so oftentimes we're showing what is that a fiscal, jobs, and tax benefit and spending benefit to the community from this project. And you also have to have an employment plan. And this is pretty common, especially in urban areas, that they want to show what kinds of wages you're going to be paying and all of that. That has nothing to do with the TIF itself, other than that's the program eligibility requirements. It's not required to have that around the country. That just happens to be your eligibility. And then there are other TIF eligibility requirements here as well. Cannot be a nonprofit, has to be at least $2 million, must have site control, can only be commercial, can't be single family homes. You have to be able to maintain those improvements. You've got to show us what it's going to look like before and after, just like HGTV. And we really want it to be vertical and dense and walkable as much as possible. So that minimum floor area ratio wants to be more than just a one-story situation. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and then I can turn it over to my team to talk through the actual project at hand. And I apologize that I will have to leave a little bit early.
Questions?
One question. Taylor Adams for the record, coming back to something you mentioned a moment ago, you mentioned that everything we're doing here is pay as you go. Would another way to say that would be a performance-based project, so the developer must.
That's right. If it doesn't perform, they don't get the benefit.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Jay, anything from you online?
No, Taylor actually, took my question. So thank you, Taylor.
I've got a question. Does the agency ever issue bonds?
Brian McCardle for the record, the agency can issue bonds. And the agency can issue a bond before a project, and the agency can issue a bond once a project's completed. Okay, it's de-risked, and they can issue a bond, give the funds to a developer rather than pay it off multiple years and take on the debt and use the property tax to pay off those bonds. It's just unfavorable at the moment.
Michael Pine for the record, sorry about that. If they did issue a bond pre-project, what's the risk to, is it the city, the general fund, what's the risk?
Yeah, the risk is on the redevelopment agency. There is some wall between the city's general fund and the redevelopment agency taking on bonding. The risk is you take on a bond, you give it to the developer. Two things: if the developer doesn't finish the project, then the city's at risk to pay off those bonds, regardless of whether the project came off or not, and whether or not future property tax is created to pay off those bonds. The second risk is if you model it out and it doesn't create the property tax that you thought it would create, then it creates a delta between how much revenue you're bringing in property tax versus the debt service on those bonds. And so you have to get your numbers really good, or else you run into that situation.
Okay.
Pay as you go de-risks everything so that the project finishes, the Washoe County assessors assesses the project. And whatever the property tax is, the developer would get 60-100% of the property tax. If their model and projections and our model projections don't come out, then we all kind of lose, but we'll come to that problem.
And the share the developer would get is just on their project. They don't get the uplift on their other projects, let's say within the same sub-district.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. John Shipman, would you like that?
Sorry, John Shipman for the record, City Attorney's Office. There may not be an ability to issue bonds because of the term of the agency.
Yes, so that was.
Yeah.
So there's like, at most, it may be an academic discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could also add to that point, actually Attorney Assistant City Manager, based off of the existing life in the agencies, bonding may not be a possibility. Additionally, I will note, the council RDA has not indicated much of an interest or an appetite for bonding, as both agency areas have been in debt for decades. So it is possible, however, has not been discussed as an active option.
Well, question on that. In the staff report, it talked about the legislature having the ability to extend the district. Is it the legislature referring to the council, or is it actually the state
It
legislature?
is the state legislature, so
Okay.
the Reno City Council has no current authority or ability to extend the life of the area.
Okay.
The agency is a separate entity, but the area itself must be extended by state law.
Thanks.
Good questions. Any others? Let's keep moving. Next time on the project.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chair, before we start on this, just a disclosure for the record.
Okay.
My wife works for Caesars Entertainment. My sister works for UNR. I don't think there's a conflict, but I just wanted to put that out on the record.
Okay. So since we're doing disclosure.
Go for it.
So the University of Nevada, the Grand Sierra Resort, but also if we dive into a letter we may talk about in a minute. The McDonald Corona, the Pepper Mill, I'll just say pretty much everybody involved in this conversation one way or another invests in our organization, but in conversation with the city attorney, we're good to proceed on what's here today in front of us. So thank you.
Very good. Any other disclosures or conflicts? Okay,
Brian, before we get started, could you make Mike Thiessen a panelist so he could join us in this presentation? He has his hand raised.
We're doing that now.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair, we do, I believe, have public comment on this item. You have a choice to take that before or after, but noted for the record.
Before or after.
The presentation.
Yeah.
we'll go ahead. We'll do public comment after the presentation.
I'll just note, if you do want to make public comment, if you could please fill out one of these forms.
Brian, let me know when we're ready to go.
You're all set.
All good, go for it.
All right, perfect. Mike, do you want to start it off or should I?
Yeah, feel free. I'm Mike Thiessen. Thank you for letting me join. Let me kind of preface, because that was a very interesting conversation related to the bonding capacity and issues related to the TIF. And I can tell you in the research that we've been doing prior to today, in 2024, where we had met with several council people, the redevelopment agency, Brian, and some staff. It was made very clear to us that bonding capacity was not to be considered or even to be part of the conversation. So I just want to make sure that if those questions come up related to the analysis on this project, we're probably not prepared to speak of them because we have not considered them, because that was a very clear directive that was made by both elected and staff. It's maybe a bigger discussion to have within the city of Reno and other projects, but on this one, this was only viewed as a pay-as-you-go TIF recapture project. At no point was there any conversation related to bonding or any debt at all related to the city. So just want to make sure we get that out, because it's can sometimes be very confusing, but wanted to set the tone first as it relates to just the overall analysis that was done for this project.
Perfect. So I'm Lucas, this is Will, we're from the Hunden team. One thing I want to get clear before we start this is we were hired by the city of Reno and the redevelopment agency. We were not hired and we're not working for the developer. So we're here to serve your committee. Our engagement with the city of Reno was twofold. One, to review the proposal from the Morello Gaming Group, as well as to explain and give the financial implications of extending the RDA2, which we might refer to as RDA during this presentation, but we're only talking about the second one. One key takeaway that became evident early in our analysis was that the developer does not intend to develop any part of this project unless the extension does occur. And we'll tell you about those financial implications in the later slides. To explain the project that we keep referring to, we have a visual on the right here of what's happening. On the top left is where most of the meat is. There's a 10,000 seat arena, a 2,400 space parking garage, a 50,000 square foot community ice facility, which is C, which is connected to the arena. And then there's 24,000 square feet of retail. In addition to this, I guess in the south of this picture, there's the high-tech aqua golf driving range, which is the first of its kind. 300 workforce housing apartments. There's some market rate in there. And then there's a potential 500 room hotel. I know that this 500 room hotel, the number of rooms has changed and it's been a moving target over time, but these will come in later phases. Here is a development timeline. So the first project element is supposed to open in 2028, and that is going to be things that are attracting the most visitors. So the arena, aqua golf, and then the associated parking garage. 4 years later, we get the workforce housing and some of the retail. And then many years down the road would be the new hotel tower and a new hotel garage. An interesting note is this 2036 aligns sort of, I think it's 2035, where the RDA2 ends right now. So that's just an interesting thought to keep in mind. Looking at the funding for this and where it impacts taxpayers and citizens of Reno, we looked at which funding streams is the project taking, and withholding from the city and citizens. There is no on-site sales tax or lease tax or hotel bed tax or any additional surcharges or bonds issued in this scenario. And the amount of property taxes that the city, state school systems are getting today will be the same amount they get in the future. It only impacts incremental. So any additional property taxes that would be made and only made because of this project. Our project looked at all of the different elements part of this and did market research on them. For the entertainment elements, we talked with multiple promoters from family shows like Disney on Ice, which is Feld, to Live Nation, which is your biggest concerts and your smallest concerts. We learned about Arena. We learned that this market is very underserved. There's many groups that aren't coming here because there's not a great place to host a show, but it is perfect for routing, going from one market to the next. If there was a new arena and a new facility, it would become a target market for many shows that Reno just can't handle right now. To learn more about the typical real estate assets, we spoke with multiple brokers, as well as ran our normal course of CoStar research and all of our other tactics. In doing this, we learned that the retail part of the project is highly supported. Reno needs some more retail, and Reno needs more housing. So the multifamily is fully supported. What isn't the most supported in today's market would be another large 500 key hotel. Many of the newer products on the market are smaller key count hotels. A 500 room hotel would be a beast in this market. And that's one reason that it's in the later phase of development. And that is because once we see the success of the arena, hopefully it will drive the demand for more room nights, meaning that another hotel would be needed.
So Lucas, can I just weigh in there real quick? I think the impetus to the start of the study and the start of the conversation that GSR was having with the city arena was the notion of an arena. And the arena, and many times is talked about in kind of a simplistic sense as being the family room of a community. It's where you go and you have your entertainment and you watch things and you watch games and you have fun. It's not the formal dining room that your mother would, vacuum out and wouldn't allow you to be there, but it's a place to gather and it's a place to be. Reno is very unique because of, number one, your explosive growth. Number two, your position between Sacramento and Salt Lake from a routing perspective. And if there's interaction with the university and their conference, it opens you up to have events that are not currently being held. That may or may not be Division One or the first weekend of the NCAA basketball tournament. I noticed we referenced earlier about the city of Boise. I grew up and went to high school in Boise, so I hold it true and dear to my heart. It was very impactful for my life. And those of you that know me probably will let you know why I am the goofball that I am. But one of the highlights in Boise and at the Boise State Arena is the NCAA basketball tournament that comes on every 3 to 4 year rotation. And the ironic thing it is, and maybe that's just the way we do it in Idaho, is whoever the lower seed is always has the home field advantage because all the local crowd will always root for the underdog just for the sense of doing it. But what it really does is it shows that the amount of people that come in for that long weekend, hotel nights, food, retail, there's always that gap between those 2 days. And in those 2 days is always when you see the economic development downtown or near the university. In addition to that, because of the university's success, and potentially this would open this up to have the conference tournament that could happen on every other day. So it's not just about the local impact, but it's also about getting on a rotation to where you would have tourism-driven events that would happen at the arena. So we can talk about family shows, we can talk about Disney on Ice, and we can talk about men's and women's basketball at the university. But those every other years where you're potentially getting those high impact tourism driven events, you don't have the facility to do that right now in Reno. So as you continue to, as Brian said, have all those things that people want to experience in Reno from the outside, this is the type of facility that you would need to have to do that. And it's just one of the many. It's not the end all be all and it doesn't solve all. It just puts one more tool in your tool belt from a tourism attraction plan.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. So we wanted to break our case studies into two different sectors. One starting with universities, and then one talking about the state of Nevada. Getting an arena built totally in a private manner is atypical across the United States. We have where I'm from, University of Louisville, University of Evansville, and University of Nebraska, as well as the current UNR facility, all were built mainly with public funding, issued bonds, and used offsite taxes to pay off these revenues, the initial costs for years to come. And that's where this project and the Moody Center, which is at the University of Texas at Austin, kind of stand alone, in that they are mainly privately financed or 100% privately financed. No bonds were used, no taxes, no new taxes were created. So it's really a special offer for the University of Nevada at Reno, and for other colleges. Now, if we look at facilities across the state, this project, as well as the T-Mobile Arena, stand out in being the only two projects that would be 100% initially privately financed. The Allegiant Stadium and the Future A Stadium are two big name projects that you guys have heard about in the news recently, and they had bonds issued and offsite taxes were used. So we'll move into more of a breakdown of the RDA structure after confirming that this is really a unique situation and opportunity that Reno has.
Yeah, let's talk just real quickly about that competitive set where we talked about the university. So, well, we know that Reno is in no way Austin, and you may or may not want to be Austin, Texas, but anyway, with the traffic and the explosive that growth is being there. But the similarities between the project and not having public financing is very stark to any place you would look across the country. So you can either take that as an opportunity or the fact that this is a unique opportunity for Reno to capture or not capture. It's not our decision to make. It's to give you the background of information to see what is typically done across the country in other issues. Austin is an exploding market. It's obviously viewed, I think, much like Nashville, as the live music capital of the world, which is why it became the ability to have that finance to be done on a private sector basis versus a public sector basis. And then anybody who has ever done any work in Texas knows that usually the University of Texas gets what the University of Texas wants. So there's always that little bit of element in there. But we wanted to give you a comparison across the country. So if you know the Yum Center in Louisville that sits right on the river, publicly financed. Evansville, publicly financed. The University of Nebraska, which is the premier flagship university in Nebraska, had public financing. So giving you the most recent, there was large donations that went into the University of Oregon at the Matt Center, but that was obviously funded by Phil Knight, who's obviously a big benefactor due to his investment in Nike. So you have a very unique situation in Reno to possibly take the advantage of if you want to, but this is truly what we would call a privately financed arena. And that's something that if the city does choose to do that, they can hang their hat on it from a fiscal responsibility perspective. But also that it's an opportunity to take advantage of maybe somebody else's investment that you get the greater benefit of than just the arena investment.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
In your analysis, are there any microphone here? In your analysis, are there any publicly financed arenas that are privately owned?
You know what? I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I cannot think of one. I mean, we can go back and do more research, but typically if something is publicly financed, it's financed for a reason, because public financing and ownership typically means that it then does not qualify for property tax or leasehold interest tax or personal property taxes within that building. So as you're seeing things that are publicly financed and publicly owned that might be privately managed or managed by the private sector, I don't know any that have been financed publicly and then privately owned, but would be happy to do more research on that if that's important to you guys to know.
Thank you.
Mike, is there anything you wanted to say on the Nevada Stadium and Arena deal?
No, I mean, as we look globally across the country, we talked about Texas and Kentucky. We wanted to then break it down to, what was obviously within the border of Nevada itself. And as much as we like Allegiant, as much as it's, great that the A Stadium is done, those are different, unique situations. And we wanted to make sure that you knew what had happened globally within Nevada as a whole. you shouldn't probably compare yourself to Allegiant, and you probably shouldn't compare yourself to the A's, but this is, but we wanted to see what has been done in the past within the borders of Nevada itself as a state.
So to go over what the developer is requesting, I know we've talked about it a few different times, but this current RDA structure for the TIF allows the developer to recapture up to 100% of that incremental property taxes through 2035. And what this developer is requesting is to extend that to 2055, so 20 years extension. But instead of, being able to capture 100% of that incremental property tax, they are just wanting to take the city of Reno's portion, which makes up about 26%. So the county, the state, the school districts, all those other municipalities will still get the, incremental benefits. So it's a great deal for them. Now, the reason they want to extend it 20 years is because of that timeline we saw a few slides ago. By in 2035, the phase 3, that hotel, has not been developed yet. So they're just wanting to see those benefits from that hotel as well. So a few big things we just really want to lock down is we want to make sure, that there's no bonds, of course, and there's no huge upfront cost that the city needs to do. And of course, we talked about it before. What happens if the developer does not build out the other phases, if they only do the arena? Well, then they just won't capture as much incremental revenue. And so that's just a big thing to think about. And then why is Reno considering extending it? Why even consider this? So first is to look at those short-term gains. You have increased construction activity, more jobs created during that RDA, during the TIF. You have increased tourism, more local spending. And then finally, once this RDA 2 ends, the city is able to fully recapture all of that incremental property tax. And I didn't know if Lucas or Mike wanted to add anything to that.
I think another thought process about extending the RDA 2 is the fact of the timeline of how close it was, how much it was impacted by 2008, and with the cap on how much you can increase property taxes each year within the state, it has been severely hindered in its current timeline of what it's been able to do. And then Mike, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to as Brian eloquently put at the beginning, that you have all these tools and and some of them have been utilized and some of them have not been utilized. So the RDA extension is a tool. If it is then obviously not utilized related to the arena or anything else, if you take it off of the table, it's probably incrementally harder to get it back into place. So whether the arena gets built or the workforce housing gets built or anything happens at GSR or anything within that RDA district, always give yourself that tool. Always have that arrow in your quiver as an economic development tool for Reno itself as a whole. So whether this project happens and there's a recapture of property taxes, great, it worked. If it doesn't happen, we would still extend you. We would still think it's in your best interest to extend the RDA so that you have that tool for future use within the river and anything else that may come up. So it's okay to divorce yourself from, we don't need to extend it just for the GSR proposed project, but we should do it for the city of Reno as a whole proposed project. And then I think I want to make sure that we understand, and this might be a conversation that you have with your friends at the county and the other taxing districts, is right now the ask is just for Reno's portion, not the overall increment that is being generated. So you can take that as an affront or you can take that as an opportunity. But Reno would be the one that would be participating in the increment. The other taxing bodies would then go ahead to get the new increment that's generated.
So I've got a question. This is Kurt Stitzer for the record. As I understand it, the RDA expires per state law in 2035, correct? And so
that's our understanding as well. Yeah, that's our understanding as well. Yep.
Additional 20 years of what the city's tax income would be. Is that legal, being that the RDA has expired, or since the RDA has expires on 2035, but they're asking for a 20-year extension beyond
So for the
2035?
record, John Shipman for the city attorney's office. Yeah, any deal would have to be contingent upon the
NRS.
legislature extending the RDA. I mean, the one other point I'd make is like, I mean, I think there was a statement about like just the 26%. you know, the full tax increment will come to the agency. I just want to make sure people understand that, and that, yes, maybe only 26% of it is used for the project. But there's no, currently in law, state law, there's no ability to kind of pass through that increment to the taxing agencies while the RDA is in place. So that would have to be an additional ask of the legislature to provide some sort of mechanism for that.
And Mike Van Houten, for the record, is there an appetite to extend this at the legislature? And are we talking about this current session or 2 years from now? Because they only meet, you know, every 2 years. Is it something that's already moving
I haven't
through?
seen a BDR.
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager, if I could, for the record, Mr. Chair. There's currently discussion, however, there is not a BDR that has been released with language. And the city has also not utilized their BDRs for this.
So just comment, so Paul Klein for the record. So the city would have to seek an extension of RDA 2 and the next legislative session, 2027, for an extension of 20 years. This, that would be the plan.
There, again, Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record, as there's no plan in place, I can't speak to that. I can say that we are in a current legislative session, as you're aware. So if there were a bill to come forward, there's a possibility that that could be passed by the legislature this session. It's just not something that the city has taken a position on, as there's no bill in front of us.
Michael Pine, kind of follow up. Has the agency or the city, actually approved the use of TIF financing on this project, or are we still kind of just in the conceptual phases?
We are still in conceptual phases, so what's in front of you today is the market study analysis for the application that was submitted to the RDA. Direction from the RDA was to engage with a third-party consultant, which is Hunden, to review first the market study analysis. The step after this would be your next agenda item, which is to move forward with negotiation of the actual deal points and application with Hunden on behalf of the city. So first step is market study.
I got questions on the next step, but we can talk about it later.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's keep going.
Perfect. So this is a pretty simple slide of just what the property taxes at GSR would look like without an RDA extension on the left and with an RDA 2 extension on the right. So that line is increasing, but you have to imagine that the depreciation of assets that Nevada so currently has would actually make that line a little bit flatter. But on the right, we show after each phase is implemented, property taxes go up that much more. The light green portion is what the city, state, all of the property tax entities would receive. And then the checkered area is the amount that the developer would withhold. We didn't put exact numbers on it, kind of just more of a visual of showing that the city, the state, they're all gaining more taxes over time. And then once the RDA 2 ends at the end, they're really getting that full pie. So they're not taking it all and they're just skimming it off the top.
Yeah, I want to make sure I think I would not say that the word would be withhold. So that's an ability to have a recapture. And I think we want to make sure that we understand, and I'll leave this to the city attorney to work through the logistics of it. But in many cases, we talk about a pay-as-you-go TIF. The taxes would be paid and then would be recaptured back to the developer. So it would not be a withholding of tax. There would not be anything like that. But that's ultimately developed within a master development agreement. But what we wanted to show is the crosshatched area is the area that would potentially be on a recapture within a complete build-up. So as you can see, it's really just a sliver of the total tax collection that would be within RDA 2.
Okay, hey, Rodden, for the record, a quick question, Lucas. So you said you didn't put numbers to this, but you did model this, Chris. Since we're presenting this to the public, I think it is important that we get it on the record that you modeled this and you stand by sort of the projection that you make on the right side.
Correct. And we will show you the numbers on the following slides.
Thank you.
It's just a rough graphic.
Yes, so this is the numerical version of pretty much that last graph you just saw. So the total 6 million in that first year is the total incremental property tax, the 6 million above the baseline. And that's all from the arena, the parking garage and the golf course, and then increases at phase 2 with the retail, phase 3, of course, with that large hotel. And what we see is that blue portion is what's going to be, recaptured by the developer. So through 2055, that 30 years, it's about 89.7 million. And then the other 252 million would go, to that TIF fund, totaling around $342 million in property tax or incremental property tax over those 30 years. But when we look at the 89.7, what the developer is recapturing, what we looked at was taking that present value of it, and we got around, using 3.8%, it's about $50 million. And what's interesting is we also modeled out what happens if they did not, if there is no extension and they did it now till 2035. We also put a present value on that, and we have those slides in the longer presentation, and that also equaled 50.3 million. So the nominal value, this one's a lot, larger, of course, but when we're looking at the present value of the dollar, they're pretty much the exact same. The only difference is here, the time frame of when you get it.
I just want to make sure that we understand that the blue increment is the crossed hats area on the slide that we had previously shown you. So this graphic here was modeled into the increment before. So as you saw the crossed hatch green across the top, that is the baby blue that's on this economic slide right here.
Question, is there any proposal from the developer to cap the aggregate amount that they would receive, or is it taxes go up, they get more, if they go down to risk, they might get less?
That's one of those negotiating points.
Right. Next.
So we also looked at the bigger picture, right? What happens to the city of Reno as a whole? So not only looking at what happens on site. So what we see is there's no extension, the project is not developed, there's $0 of net new spending. And what net new spending is spending that would not have happened except for due to this project. So what we see is if the project is developed and everything goes as planned with the 3 phases, from now to 2055, we see about 2.6 billion in net new spending. Again, spending that would not have happened unless this project was developed.
And I feel as though I have to mention it in Nevada. None of this is gaming dollars. So this is food and beverage, transportation, hotel room nights, spending of that such, not gaming handle. And we have a similar graphic to this about taxes for the state and for Reno in the longer analysis. Do you want to talk about the programming at the facility, or should I?
Oh, you can take it.
So we have spoken with UNR, and they have indicated that they are interested in moving to this facility. If they did, there would be about 17 basketball games per year. They indicated that most likely ticket prices would go up, and so would attendance. There's also potential for some type of minor league hockey or minor league tenant to join the facility. That would be around 39 games a year. In total, this facility would bring 95 new events to the market in Reno, bringing about 550,000 people per year to the market. So pretty significant, not a small venue, not peanuts we're talking about. And then, Will, you want to talk about the fiscal impacts?
Yes. So similar to what we saw in that slide with the red and green arrow, this is the summary of all of the things we looked at in terms of net new spending to the city of Reno. And that's where that 2.6 billion is, that first number, that net new direct spending. When we look at direct, indirect, and induced, it adds up to about 4 billion. In terms of earnings, we see that at 1.1, for those 30 years. Full-time equivalent jobs supported, on average, it's about 526 jobs supported each year. And once everything is developed, all 3 phases, it's a total of 671 jobs. We also looked at the net new tax revenue the city would receive in terms of looking at the room tax. And that's not just the, hotel tax from the project itself, but also from this being developed, more rooms sold around in the corresponding area, getting the revenue from that as well. And we also looked at the C tax for Reno, which is a little complicated since it gets sent to the state first and then reallocated based on population and amount of spending. but that totals about 22.7 million for those 30 years, or around 700,000 on average per year.
Taylor, for the record, you mentioned net new revenues. Is it safe to assume then that you factored in some sort of displacement factor in your analysis? And if you can you share what that displacement factor was? And anything you've got on absorption as well, please?
It's very hard to explain our exact number on substitution, we call it, because we'll do it for each different asset. So we'll do it for the types of concerts, the type of sporting events, as well as the type of people that are coming to each of those. How we get those mainly is we use a platform called placer.ai. So we can see where people are coming from and where they go after and before each event. We use that to see how many people are coming from outside Reno or outside Nevada, and then where they're going after. Are they going to a hotel? And what are the rates at those hotels? So it's hard to put one exact factor on it because there are 10 different elements to this. But we can get you an answer to that after this call.
Thank you.
But I think your question is very relevant because clearly University of Nevada, Reno basketball games may be more locally focused, and there may be some traveling fans that come depending on whether it's Utah State, Boise State, those other schools we talked about. Maybe minor league hockey, same thing. But the bigger concerts where you've got the ability to draw potentially from Tahoe, from Sacramento, or even as far depending on the act. So there's not a flat absorption or substitution. Each of those different classifications is going to have a different calculation or a different equation for that. So we can't just say it's 0.76. It varies for each of the different product types that would happen in the arena itself.
Kurt Stitzer, for the record, do you guys know how the new stadium in South Lake Tahoe was funded? And you know, them having a minor league hockey team there that feeds the Las Vegas Knights, are we within the, you know, radius that would disqualify another minor league hockey team coming here?
We haven't gotten to that kind of a detail yet. We're aware of the arena that's in Tahoe, and as a matter of fact, we called them related to some of the routing discussions. There's clearly a better population base within the greater Reno market, and also it's easier to route as we're moving, as we talked about, from the greater San Francisco, Sacramento area into the Salt Lake City area. So, I mean, it's a competitor. You're not going to lose a concert to Tahoe if you've got a concert coming to Reno just because of the population base, unless it's very, very unique. And a promoter cut a disproportionate deal in Tahoe than they would have not gotten in Reno. So aware of the project, probably do not view it as a direct competitor. Can't speak to the hockey dynamic because we don't know if there's been a hockey team that's been committed to on this project yet. I think that's still in the works.
And do you know how they funded the construction of that new facility?
They installed a $5 resort fee on hotels within Tahoe, and then there was a mix of private money that went into it. So OVG is a partner in that deal, but a new tax that taxed visitors. And then one more factor about the hockey leagues, it depends on which league they're in. From our indications from our hockey experts, it seems as though it would not be an issue depending on what league would come in. And there's many different potentials for that. So I believe that's the end of our presentation. We can just go back to any slide or answer any questions. Thank you guys for having us today.
Questions?
I have one more. Did the applicant or the developer do a market analysis, or was the city's the only one that was done?
They did a preliminary analysis of just could we support, it was like a market study, impact study, when they first approached this, but it wasn't expansive enough. So it was, you know, our direction was to go seek a deeper analysis.
Okay.
Mike?
Mike Manhattan for the record. Could you go a little bit more into the but-for analysis of this project? Because there was a lot of initial backlash publicly. I feel like a lot of them almost felt like it was a bait and switch in kind of a way. And I'd love to kind of calm their concerns a little bit. Were they going to seek public funding from the start of this project when it was announced in 2023. Could you go into a little bit more on that?
So we can't speak to the developer, however, a representative is present today. One thing just to note for the board's reminder, again, Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. What is in front of you today is the market analysis. The but-for component is step 2.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is the gap analysis and understanding deal points and financing. So I will state that for the record. However, Mr. Chair, you do have an applicant's representative if you would like them to answer that question, or you can hold that based off your position.
Let's continue questions based on the analysis from these folks, and then I'm sure they'll address it. We'll give them some time to enter the presentation team.
Well, Taylor Adams, for the record, while we still have the consultant with us, going back to a couple of the questions that were asked just a minute ago and the assistant city manager's comments just a moment ago, is it safe to say that as we're looking forward to the next item, that our work here is not done, that there's research to complete, deal points left to contemplate, and as you just mentioned, as it relates to gap analysis, more I guess more information to gain and know before we're making final decisions on this project?
That is correct. The decision in front of you today, right now, this is discussion only for analysis, just review of the market study. The next item, as you mentioned, is going to review of, do we move forward with the contract with the consultant to then get into gap analysis, financing discussion, deal points.
And-
So this body would see this presentation again, the next step of it. There's more work to be done.
And that's really all that we're potentially talking about next. It's basically understanding the things that we don't know today that we need to know to even have this conversation, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And Kurt Stitzer, for the record, as we move into these later phases and the city's hiring consultants, that's for analysis. The burden is on the applicant to provide all the studies and documentation, or are we generating this stuff on behalf of the project?
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record, the consultant, which is hired by the city, would be working with the applicant. They provide the information, the analysis will happen from their information, and then the consultant is checking the math.
Okay, is that standard practice on
Yes.
most projects going forward,
Yes.
that the city hires the consultants?
Correct. The city will always be in a position of hiring the consultant. That way we are being responsible for taxpayer money. The developer would not be selecting the consultant to review the math.
Thank you.
And if I might just jump in there, because I'll take the opportunity to try to add to that really on behalf of the firm. So right now we are working on 2 NFL stadiums on behalf of the municipality, as well as 2 larger NHL master plan arena or developments within an urban environment. So this would not be our first rodeo. Not that means we're better than anybody else or not better than anybody else, but we understand the dynamic between what a developer or an arena operator may want, what's the benefit to the municipality, and are there things that are normally part of the push and pull of any deal. And they may not be arena related or development related. They may be to the benefit of the city on other things. And that's everything from tickets to sponsorships to everything else. So there's an overall deal that has to be cut, and it's more than just the RDA 2. And I say that not because you couldn't do it yourself, but the dynamics at play between sports and entertainment, and in this particular instance, gaming, multifaceted. And yeah, we'd like to do it. We're excited about it. You have a great opportunity. And I'll just leave it at that. Not to get into the next phase, but there's multiple things here that need to be considered as you guys move forward. Everything obviously comes back to the city, and we always advocate on what we think is best for the city, not what's best for the developer.
I just want to check, Jay, you have any questions online about this market study presentation?
Not at this moment. I'm good right now.
Kara, you have anything?
I just want, Kara Harris for the record, if we do move into the next phase, will we have a more in-depth on the 2035 versus the 2055, since we are unknown if we can extend to 2055? It sounded like one of the gentlemen had stated, Lucas, that you do have more in depth on just the 2035. if the RDA is just through that versus the 2055. I think I would like to see what that looks like as the RDA stands currently, since we don't have that moving forward.
Yes, yeah, we have a much longer presentation with those slides of just through 2035. But the reason we didn't really include it in this executive summary is because when talking to the developer, it was under our understanding that without this extension, this development is not going to happen.
Thank you. That clarified.
You have anything?
I'm gonna follow up with Kara's concepts. If we do move forward in this, I am wondering if there is formulaic data from your past studies to factor in what the cost to the community is to have a development, an arena like this occur, when there then is no offsetting property tax to pay for what it costs the city.
Are you talking about like sphere of influence services,
Exactly.
vehicle miles traveled, all that kind of stuff?
Well, impacts to just city government and costs to, fire, to police, to what have you. Under those circumstances, we know that having an arena this size in that position in our city where, yes, there, that entity, GSR, already has security around them, they do, but this is another level. And it would be normal in a commercial real estate development to look at what's the impact to the city. And the city would be receiving property tax to help buffer that, but in this case not. So just thinking ahead, if too many words for, and we're not there yet.
Can I add to that? I think part of this is when they go to build this project, they will pay full freight on all the regional road impact fees, development fees, all the other fees that go into developing any project of this size that go into pay for, road improvements, infrastructure. So as they said, they do pay the impact fees when they build it. The only thing that we're withholding is the new property tax created.
Correct.
But yeah.
Yeah.
The regional road impact fees,
Sewer connection fees,
sewer connection
building
fees, yeah, all that
permits,
stuff.
But I think your point's more police and fire service.
Exactly. Yes.
general funded.
General
operations.
fund, yeah.
Any other feedback for the presenter that they need to take back? Okay, let's move into
Thank you.
public commentary. Do we have forms to establish an order? You guys want to do order?
You dog farm?
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna defer to the university to go first, and then I'll go last. If there's any questions. Very business really well. Let's lead on.
I will.
Please.
I feel.
Oh, we did.
Can we count it one?
Oh. Do you want
Yeah, no.
president?
I tried. All right, well, first, happy Wolfpack Friday. So my name is Stephanie Rem, and I'm the athletic director at the University of Nevada. So first, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for your service on this committee or board.
Advisory board.
I heard something. Sorry. Oh, that was you. Okay. So I've been now in Northern Nevada for 2.5 years. I came to live here and work here a lot, obviously because of President Sandoval, but also because of the community, because of the trajectory of the university and President Sandoval's commitment to athletics. And that I think is well known and a big reason why we're moving in the direction we're moving. So I've continued to learn. I think externally it's important to know what we're focused on. One is winning. And we know that is a big part of all of this. Second, creating Nevada's college town. So I appreciate what Brian said, but that is a big focus for us. The mayor declared us as Nevada's college town about 1.5 years ago. And then elevating Northern Nevada through sport. So those are the things that we are focused on. So I firmly believe, and I would suspect that most people can understand this, there is nothing that brings a community together more than sports. Just nothing can rally a community and elevate a community. And that's what we focus on, but you have to win in order for that to happen. I understand that. So With an R1 institution, a Division I athletics program, we believe that that helps all of Northern Nevada. It helps in the efforts to bring other businesses here. It helps to, when you have a strong workforce, it elevates the university when your teams are successful. So all of those things are focused on. In order to do all of those things, we have to have resources. And in order to have resources for athletics specifically that we can control, not conference revenue or university support, it's three things. It's ticket revenue, it is sponsorship dollars, and it is philanthropy. And so for us, focusing on ticket sales, so you can look at our venues. So everybody knows Lawler was built in '83, nothing has been invested into it. The school down south, the same time they had Thomas and Mack, and then in 2015, they put in, I think, $50+ million from state revenue to enhance that. What does that do? It allows Thomas and Mack to generate significantly more revenue than we can generate out of Lawler. So currently, when you look at Lawler, everybody, I assume everybody's been there at some point. Back in the day, it brought in tremendous concerts. I hear from everybody all the cool shows that they saw at Lawler. Those are not happening anymore, as you know. In order to generate revenue out of Lawler, we already are selling out the lower bowl because there is interest. That's where the revenue comes, because the seats that you can charge a decent price for those seats. The upper bowl is not, it doesn't generate the kind of revenue because the seats are not as expensive. You move over to Mackey, Mackey is the same. Mackey, we sell out in this club, the suites, and the loge boxes. That's the premium spaces. That's what generates a significant amount of revenue. The more seats we sell, they're in the general bowl. And so that you just can't generate the kind of revenue through that you can when you have premium spaces. So then I go to all of you and the experiences you have. Why do you go to sporting events? Why do you go to concerts, right? It's an experience and you want to have a premium experience and people pay for that. When you go down to Southern Nevada and the reason that UNLV can pay a $3.5 million football coach is because they can generate revenue out of Allegiant. Allegiant Stadium has the ability to do that. There are premium spaces. It comes at you come with a great experience there. We have not had that opportunity to do that here. In order for us to get to the direction we want to go as an institution, as an athletics program, we have to figure out a way to generate more revenue. In order to win, we have to be able to generate revenue. This opportunity for us, the partnership the GSR has provided for us, they've included us through this entire process. They want to make sure the locker rooms look great. They want to make sure the experience of our fans, the ticket prices, everything, they have been lockstep and they've just been tremendous partners and we couldn't be more excited about the opportunity. It will significantly change the trajectory of our athletics program. Significantly. And there's nothing else in our future that will allow us to make that kind of jump. And so that's why we think it's super important and I appreciate the fact that you guys are going through this process.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question, just out of curiosity. Kurt Stitzer for the record. What's the plan for Lawler? If and when this happens?
So we right now use it for both for graduation and winter. A lot of the high schools use it. We have a women's basketball team that'll compete there, and then we will continue to evaluate.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for your service. This is, as I sit here and listen to the presentations, I'm really envious because you have an opportunity to review something that I think is probably the most impactful project since the MGM itself was built. I mean, it really is something that I think is a great opportunity. I'm not going to repeat what Stephanie had to say. I do also want to thank the Grand Sierra and Alex Morello for including us as part of this process and approaching us. And Stephanie said it well, and all of you. I mean, Lawler was built when I was a student there, and there hasn't been 1 cent of investment in there. And I likened it at the press conference as your mom and dad's house. You love it, you have great memories, but you'd like to have something maybe perhaps a little better. This project presents that. The university is really trying to be a great partner in this community. And you've heard the recent announcements associated with Hot August Nights. You've seen with our town, we host many events on campus for that recently. And you may have seen an article on University Village. We purchased 16 parcels with historic homes that we've improved and updated for affordable housing for our students, faculty, and staff. And so we continue to work with the Grand Sierra. As I said, personally, I'm very excited about this as being somebody who grew up in this community. And when Brian was talking about Park Lane, I remember that when I was a kid and the changes that made and the consequences that it had on our downtown, where I see this project as having the opposite effect. I really do believe that it will enhance this community. The last thing I want to comment on, and Mr. Van Houten, you commented on. So I was traveling yesterday and arrived late last night, and I believe there was a letter that was circulated to all of you. And I was name checked in there, and I think a comment that I made at the press conference was weaponized in this letter, and I wasn't consulted before. I let my name and comment was used in this letter, but when I said, and I've corrected this before, but and I know there's a journalist online here, and I'd appreciate it, is there's no university money going into this project. And I think that's what I was trying to convey at the time that I said that. And obviously it's a challenging time, and that's why we see this as a great opportunity, as Stephanie said, to enhance the opportunities for our athletic teams, and particularly our men's basketball team. You ask what's going to happen to Lawler, frankly, it'll be 17 less dates, on that, and we'll make it a premier venue for our women's basketball team, and perhaps it'll be available, for other events. But we frankly do not have the money to invest in it right now to make it the kind of facility that we would like it to be. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have, but we're really encouraged by what we've heard. You have hard decisions to make. I really appreciate the questions that have been asked already. I think this type of due diligence is necessary for a project of this magnitude, but it truly is an opportunity for a community, and I want to thank the city for its hard work that it's conducted, and we will continue to be available to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much.
Any immediate questions for President Sandoval? Anybody else from the university team want to speak this time? You want to speak last? I can go to online folks as well. That's fine. Anybody online want to provide any public comment?
Chair, I see no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Dis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I'm going to echo President Sandoval and Athletic Director Rem, thanking all of you for taking part in this process. My name is Andrew Dis. I'm a Senior Vice President with Morello Gaming, which owns and operates the Grand Sierra. And, this project before you, already with the steps that we have taken, we are going through the most thorough vetting process that any project in the history of this city has gone through. The fact that this board exists is part of that process. The city in the past has treated different projects that come before them as a one-off, and they move to negotiating a development agreement without having the extra layer of review that all of you are providing. So I just wanted to thank you all for taking part in this process. I want to also, Mr. Van Houten, to answer your question. There was some confusion in the press with our initial announcement, and as President Sandoval was specific to the use of university funds to this project, so was Mr. Morello. And I have gone back and I have watched the tape probably a dozen times. And what he said is that we are not asking the university for a single penny to build this project. And that got turned into a larger context of no public money in general. But what was actually said, and you can go back and fact check it, is that we are not asking the university for a penny for this project. You heard from the two leaders of our university that they simply don't have the money, even if we wanted to ask them for something. So want to clear that up off the bat. The arena gets the most attention in this project. There are so many other elements to this, but the arena is really, because it is the first one that we're going to be building, a part of our first phase, and it is really going to drive the bulk of the incremental tax revenue that you have been discussing today. So there is a big upside to what the city, the county, the school district, how much is gonna be put into that redevelopment fund? And you remember, we're talking about 26 cents out of every dollar that goes into that fund. That potentially could come back to us for this project. Now, Mr. Morello bought the Grand Sierra back in 2011. Most of you on this board, I know, lived here at that time. And it was a tough time for this community. And people told him he was crazy for buying the Grand Sierra at that time. They said that there was serious questions whether gaming was actually a viable business in Northern Nevada anymore. Not only because of the recession, but because of the rise of tribal gaming in Northern California that we compete with. And he's not from Reno, but he thought he could make it work, and he took a huge gamble to do what he did and invest what he did into that property. And you guys have all seen what it has become today. So when he says he's going to do something, he follows through and he does it. And he is taking another gamble by doing this now. There's been discussion about extension of the RDA past 2035 to 2055. That's not guaranteed. That is him willing to move forward, to go ahead, at least do the arena portion. And if we can make it pencil and there is an extension, that makes it work for us. But that's not guaranteed right now. And we all know the legislature meets only once every 2 years. Okay, so he is very serious about moving forward. I want to talk about also the lakefront developments that we're going to be doing and about the workforce housing components that we're going to be doing. So you're all familiar with our current little driving range operation that we have on the lake. The lake is a nice feature that we really haven't done a good job in the history of that property since Kirk Krikorian opened it in 1978 of utilizing. And we want to put in basically what's called a top golf facility. We're going to buy the technology and we're going to build it. And we will be the only one in the country where you are hitting over water. The next closest top golf facility is Roseville. And so part of the study that Hunden did, and you look through it, they have the number of local visitors from the Reno area that go to that facility. Now, we're going to be able to retain and keep those people here and make sure that that money is spent in our community. Additionally, we're going to develop the north side of the lake where the current driving range is, and we're going to put in retail, restaurants, bars, and we're going to have basically a Bellagio fountain and light show that is going off on the water to act as a draw. So you're sitting there, you're having dinner, you're going on a date with your spouse, and you have a show going on in front of you. That is our idea to bring that lake to life. And I'm personally excited about that because, like I started, we have not done a good job with that. And then the other piece of that is going to be the workforce housing piece. So Mr. Morello, he always calls his team members his family, and he means it. He is part of a Cuban immigrant family that came to this country with nothing. They escaped Castro's regime, and growing up with nothing and turning into the successful person that he does, he is always looking for the next way that he can help the people that make him successful. And Mr. Adams is at every event in town talking about how housing is a problem in this community. And it's something that we have heard, that we have seen, and we have the ability to put 300 units of workforce housing. We will offer it to our team members and subsidize the cost of that housing. And if there's units left over, then we will go out to the broader community. And it's a nice location. You're going to have the Truckee River on one side and you're going to have a lake on the other side. So I want to make sure that we don't spend all this time covering what's going on with the arena. I just want us to keep in mind that there's a lot of other elements to this project, and I've gone over my time, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you all have.
Questions from Mr. Dis?
Mike Van Houten for the record, the Top Golf is part of the first phase as well, right?
That'll come after. So the first phase will be the arena in the garage. We have to do all the earthwork at the same time for that. And probably within a year after we break ground on that, we're gonna start the golf. We are losing parking, so we gotta manage phasing.
Kara Harris for the record. For clarification, if things only go through to 2035, part or some of this project can be completed if the RDA does not get extended to 2055.
Yeah, it has a severe financial implication to us, and we will have to reevaluate certain components of the project if it is not extended.
Kurt Stitzer for the record. Hello, Mr. Dias. Do you guys have any intention of getting somebody to sponsor a bill and putting in a BDR this session? Or is this something that you're kind of gonna slow roll until 2027?
We'll have to see, we have 10 years, they meet every 2 years. So there is time, but the legislative process has already been going for a couple weeks now. So it's hard to envision anything happening, this session.
Thank you.
Anything else? Jay, anything?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Any other public comment? Okay, very good. We'll close this item. Do you guys want to stick around?
Actually, Mr. Chair, before you close it, can I just
Yes.
make a comment? I know it's not a action item, but I've sat in that chair a lot of times as the applicant, and that's always being helpful to know where folks are thinking or where they stand. And to be honest with you, I've got concerns. I know we're early on in the project, but I just want to put that out there. I read Mr. Hicks' letter. I was actually thinking a lot of the things he wrote before I read the letter. It's nothing against the project. It's a very exciting project. It's a huge investment in Reno. The question for me is really whether this is the proper financing mechanism. There's a lot of public financing mechanisms, but I got to look at this in this chair through a redevelopment lens. And the GSR is an amazing property. You guys have invested a ton of money in it. And for me, it's kind of the antithesis of blight. I mean, if the rest of the city looked half as good as the GSR, I don't even think we'd have a redevelopment agency. So I just kind of want to put that out there. Obviously, no decisions today, but it's always helpful to know where folks are thinking or what their mindset is. So I just wanted to let you guys know.
Very good. Okay, we'll close this item. We'll move into C3. What we've heard before is we went through a presentation by staff on goals and expectations of this board. We had a great presentation on TIF, another great presentation on the market analysis of this project, and of course, members from the university and GSR here to answer questions. And so what C3 asks of us now is if we're comfortable or not with empowering Hunden to enter deal negotiations with the applicant and then bring back.
Mostly, can I just add point of
Please do.
clarification?
Please do.
Actually, attorney assistant city manager, that is about 85% there, with the one caveat that you would be comfortable making a recommendation to council / RDA
Yes.
to move forward
With
with
the deal.
a contract to negotiate deal points, yes.
And the negotiation of the deal points, Kurt Stitzer for the record, is with the city of Reno and not the applicant.
It is on behalf of the city of Reno with the applicant.
Understood. Okay.
So Hunden acts as our negotiating partner.
Still trying to figure out the relationship there, but yeah.
The
got it.
nuance.
Chairman, if you'll allow me a little latitude, I'd like to confirm a few points with city staff. And then I'm gonna make a motion to get, per our rules that we adopted, I'm gonna make a motion to get us into discussion on this item, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
So first, and I want to coming back to the letter that Mr. Pine represented. I read it as well, and just want to confirm one. So I'm certainly not qualified to opine on that letter, but I do think there are things in there that are worthy of consideration. Is it safe to assume that the city will give that letter full review, and that's probably going to happen independent of this body? It's going to get the attention it deserves, and whatever issues are called out in there are going to be will be dealt with during whatever comes next.
During the course of business, yes, that will be addressed. At this stage, it is considered to be general public comment that has been submitted for this item. There has not been a legal analysis completed. However, that is something that we will be reviewing through the next steps of the deal.
And I bring that up just because where I read it and agree that some of the points in there might be compelling. I don't know the code well enough to have an opinion on what's in there, and it helps me to know that someone is going to give that a review and hopefully have some conversation with the group that submitted it. Secondarily, as it relates to what you're asking us to do here, it sounds like you're asking us to basically support the naming of Hunden as the city's agent as we carry on with this work. which again, I think it's important that we know that our board doesn't have public procurement authority, that we're support, that basically, and that we don't have any oversight of the process the city went through to select this consultant, but basically what you're asking us to do is to basically, based on the work that they have done and the knowledge that they have of this project, which is unique, you're asking us to support their naming as the city's agent so that they can continue the work, I would say perhaps formalize conversation with the applicant to understand what the deal point truly is so that we have so that we have a complete information set. Is that correct?
Correct. It would also include a gap analysis as that conversation has come up.
Thank you for that. A third point that I think is important for you as part of this motion is that I think it is an obligation of this body to present complete information to the city council for their review and their analysis. And so, also, I think it's important that we document before we take any action here, that this is a precedent-setting action. That, particularly, a lot of our conversation today has been on the extension of RDA 2 and what the future could look like. And I think it is critical that we know that the type of things that we're considering here is we're kind of setting a tenor for this board's future work, is that as other projects may come before us, that we're willing to give them the same amount of attention and the same amount of focus, and really, ultimately, what could be supported. With that said, move approval to get us into to discussion.
Motion on the table from member Adams.
Nettie Alaverio, second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I've got some questions for staff. How much is the contract for?
Let me check. It is under 100,000. It is. It is not to exceed 90,000.
And what's the duration?
Meaning timeline or? There isn't a timeline. We just have rates for all their partners.
Not
so
to
it'd be
exceed.
Not to exceed 90,000.
And where's the funding come from? Does it come out of RDA?
It does
funds?
come out of RDA. Something that should be mentioned in that, in the application part of the program is that we do charge a 1% fee upon completion of the project that gets paid out of the first year's property tax increment payment to the applicant
1% calculated on what?
on the entire project cost.
The hard construction costs, the tax
The
increment?
the tax increment financing, it's a 1% of the financing agreement.
So if they were to get $90 million, it would be 1% of 90 million.
Correct.
Question about timing. Because, I mean, you said earlier that the agency, the council hasn't even decided whether they want to proceed with tax increment financing for this project. It seems to me a little premature to hire someone to negotiate terms for a deal when we don't even have direction from the council that we know that they're interested in the deal. And, we heard comments today about the timing and the need to go to the legislature and a lot of the additional steps that have to happen. So I'm just trying to understand, is there urgency to take action today on this? Or is this something that maybe can come later when we're looking at the project as a whole?
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that. Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. Council has taken the first step, which was to approve the application to move forward for the market study analysis.
But they haven't made a decision to say, yes, they want to dedicate tax increment financing to the project.
That is correct. And so what we are asking for today is a recommendation from this body to say, based off of the market analysis that has been conducted, which was direction from council, we believe that the city should move to the next step, which is negotiating the deal points. Your recommendation today would be brought before the Reno City Council RDA on March 12th to ask them that same question, that do you believe now that we have the market analysis, they will get a similar presentation to what you saw today? Should we move forward to the next steps, which are to enter into negotiation?
Yeah, and sorry, I'll go to Mr. Adams' point. I mean, I look at the job of this board as being very important, and the tenor we're setting today as being very important. And public dollars for me are something that I think we should safeguard. And for me, the concept of expending, approving or recommending the approval of expending public dollars when we don't even know or have policy direction, whether it's a project the council wants to spend dollars on, it just seems the cart before the horse a little bit to me. I'm not saying anything negative again about the consultant or the amount. It's just, for me, it's a timing issue. So I don't think I could support it.
Taylor Adams for the record. I do agree that it would be premature for us to recommend. So what I understand here is that we're not recommending to council the use of tax increment financing as part of this action. Because I do think that's a critical distinction that needs to be made, because I think we've admitted in this conversation that we don't have a data set that would take us to that point as yet. And really that what we're doing, so that I think Mr. Ponte makes a great point. I mean, I think it's dangerous for this board to recommend a spending tool to council before that's basically that gets ahead of their own deliberation. So just coming back to where I'm at on this, I'm comfortable with us continuing the research to understand fully what's entailed in the cost to the public associated with potentially executing this deal. But I do think it's important that we not go as far as suggesting to council that here's how you should execute. I think that would be well ahead of the body.
We would also support that position. At this point, there are no deal points. There's nothing for you to recommend because we don't have a gap analysis. The gap analysis is the next step after market study approval, because until we know if a gap exists, how much it is, then we don't get to get into the points of conversation on what those deal points would be.
So Nettie Oliverio for the record. So is it possible then that we are making the recommendation to dive deeper with this consulting group, but not make a recommendation for what happens with that data that they come forward with?
I would say that is probably accurate. I'm looking to legal if they have any thoughts, but in my opinion, I think that's a safe position. Part of what is also happening is we have signing authority up to certain amounts. And so the city has exhausted at a staff level what we can expend for signing authority. Also, council has asked for multiple checkpoints through this process. So step one was market analysis. This body reviews market analysis and says, okay, based off of documentation submitted, we're comfortable that we want to move to the next step, which is getting more information, doing a gap analysis. That's your but-for test. And then deal points come from that but-for. So yes.
Mike Van Houten for the record, if I'm just basing it purely on their presentation, I think they did a really good presentation of the market analysis. I think it was very thorough, especially the extended one that was posted online in the full packet. And I don't think we could get to the next step unless they actually do the gap analysis as the next step. So I'm comfortable recommending to the council that they move forward with this, particular company to do that next analysis. Because I'm guessing this and the next analysis are all going to go before the council as future steps anyways, right?
That is correct. This body does not have decision-making authority as it relates to financing.
Kurt, anything?
Nope. Kara, thank you.
Yeah, Kara Harris for the record. If this body decided to move forward with going to the next step, does this prohibit us from looking at other opportunities in RDA 2 based on the fact that there could be money going to this project?
So Brian McCarter for the record, the beauty about pay-as-you-go tax increment is this isn't taking potential opportunities away from anybody else. This is a project that would create new future dollars that would not be created but for this project being completed. So we could have 10 projects like this happening all at the same time. And I always say they would eat what they kill. Because if they never get built, they never create any funds to argue over or to, capture and declare. Yeah.
Right, so it's a recap. Jay, any questions or comments?
No,
Taylor?
Taylor Adams for the record. Couple more quick questions. So I think what you're hearing from us today is that we are willing to recommend a complete data set for city council off of which they can make future decisions. Is it safe to say though that as council appointed, as council can do whatever they want with this, whether we approve it or not? Is that correct?
That is correct.
And no matter what decision we make here today as it relates to completing the data, the council wanted to move forward with the data they have today, they could do that, correct?
Correct.
So again, I reaffirm my support for getting them the best possible information we could get them. Because obviously it's an important public decision.
Anything else?
No.
All right, let's vote. All those in favor?
We need a motion, right?
Well, we've got Taylor's motion, we have your second.
Okay,
We've discussed it, and if there's no more discussion, we can vote.
I just wanted to make sure that we were stating it as we've kind of worked it out here.
So your
As
motion
opposed to
remains
the
as
original.
proposed. Yeah.
As proposed, and I'm willing to add, consistent with conversation, consistent with discussion on the item and the points that were raised.
Thank you.
We have a clear motion.
I believe we have a clear motion. I'm looking to city attorney, as this is an action item, do we need to take public comment? Are you comfortable as long as we're doing it at the beginning and the end of our meeting?
Was if it was noticed as at the beginning and end of the meeting, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You're comfortable. Thank you for confirming. Motion is clear on our end, I believe.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Well, you guys want to hang out? It's okay if you guys want to leave now. We're gonna get into our. We'll go back to B6 and we'll talk about future dates. Thank you for all.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Okay, let's go back to B6 and talk about the RDA rebrand update.
Yep. So Brian McCardle for the record. I'll invite JP Wertz up here to explain, but since the redevelopment agency has been dormant for so long, there isn't really a lot of data out there, nor there is a specific brand identity that identifies the redevelopment area. We've even had a challenge of getting the old brand back from the late 80s, early 90s. I call it the Saved by the Bell logo because it kind of has that old school solo cup swish in it. And we even have a digital copy of it. So yeah, it's very neon. And so in order to help share what the redevelopment agency is doing, as well as create an identity and capture development, investment, and sort of help people identify and do some storytelling, we thought that a rebrand was the best process going forward. The city's economic development page is probably not robust enough to really do the type of placemaking, storytelling things we want to do. So we have gone out for an RFP for rebrand. So with that, I'll invite JP Wertz up and just give you all some insight on where we are in that process.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. JP Wertz, marketing manager for the redevelopment agency. Like Brian mentioned, we chose to approach this project because we want to be able to communicate our wins and be able to tell the story of doing business and investing in the city of Reno. Really, the project goals for this, the number one and the highest level is to establish a distinct and recognizable brand identity, so people understand exactly who they're dealing with when they're interacting with the redevelopment agency. After that would be driving stakeholder awareness and engagement. Again, we want people to interact with us as much as possible through meetings like this, through public engagement events, through social media comments, and really any sort of communication channels that we can establish with the public to get as much information to them as possible. Really, and then again, strengthening our redeveloping messages that goes back to, establishing the channels to be able to communicate what we're doing as clearly as and transparently as possible And then really the future of this redevelopment agency is we are successful building this brand to build credibility for future placemaking campaigns, which quite frankly is quite exciting and very much needed in our downtown along the Truckee River area. And then really modernizing the agency's image. As Brian mentioned, we've been defunct for about 15 years. And while we do have a very sweet logo from the 90s, we need a more modern image that we think will resonate with our constituents a little bit better. And professionalize what we're doing. And then really ensure consistency across channels, again, maintain that communication channel with our constituents and to make sure that we're transparent about our project and really shouting our wins from the mountaintop. I think that that's the most important element there. And then really to boost community and partner confidence. We have a lot of stakeholders in this city, both inside this building and outside this building. And I think it's important that they all, have a brand that they can look to and get behind and have confidence in moving forward. So the scope really has nothing to do with the individual participation programs that we have at our disposal. It really is more the image of the agency in general. So what we've asked, Brian mentioned, we've gone out to RFQ and we received really good responses. We've received 23 proposals. 22 of them were qualified. From agencies, both local and international. I'm really happy with the quality of the proposals that we received. And the scope in that RFQ that we went out with was really just for discovery and research, so public engagement, trying to figure out, what the public would like to see from us, but at the same time, how they want us to communicate to them, how they want this brand to interact. And I think that is going to help us get the most buy-in right up front. Really past that initial discovery and research stage, we're going to be moving into a brand strategy development. And that's really where we're going to start building out some of our assets and internal communication styles. And then part of that will be our visual identity design. After we have kind of a concept of what we're going to look like and sound like, we're going to start establishing messaging and communication channels, which include a website and digital presence. So we'll have our own social media channels. We will have our own website, microsite, separate from the city of Reno's. And that's really just for us to be able to communicate as quickly as possible, again, as transparently as possible. And then after we have our website in place, we'll go to an implementation and rollout strategy. And that will absolutely involve you lovely folks, as well as the public in general and everyone in this building. We want to launch this brand with the excitement that these projects deserve. And then really we'll go on a post-launch evaluation and sustainability campaign after that, making sure that our messaging stays on point, that we remain modern, our content stays consistent. And again, it represents actually what we're doing versus, the pie in the sky. Where we're at right now with this is the RFQ we posted on December 23rd. That process closed in early February. And like I mentioned, we received 23 proposals. We're currently in the review and screening process of that and hope to have a selection made in the coming weeks. And that is where we are at with our redevelopment rebrand right now. And I'd love to answer any questions that you guys might have for it.
Any questions? No, sounds like an appropriate approach.
Fantastic. It's going to be beautiful. Looking forward to unveiling it to you guys.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
We will likely have a short list to review some of the qualified candidates at the next meeting. To shortlist those and see who we want to move forward with. I think why rebrand is important. I think there's certain stories that are not being told throughout our community. I think our CVA approaches things from a visitors and a events thing. I think Edon does a great job highlighting and attracting companies, telling about our economy and business environment. No one's really doing storytelling about we are as a city and what is going on. A lot of our districts do a lot of that, but we really need to show people who we are and the opportunities. I call it Big C, Little C. Big C is the city of Reno, this building. Little C is our community. And so that's some of the storytelling we'll be doing.
And so it goes well beyond just rebranding, and it's more about the message and whatnot that we're putting out there.
Reformatting.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
We, Western Lights is a great example. We will be supporting events like that in the future. We need to have channels to tell people at a larger scale what we're doing and why this is important.
Okay, very good. Let's move to item D, board, commission, committee member reports and announcements. Anything from anybody? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item E, future agenda items. This is an opportunity to suggest any items for staff to consider. I would offer, if appropriate, are we able to make a recommendation to the city council to seek an extension of RDA 2 in the current legislative session?
If that is an item you would like us to bring forward for this body to recommend and take a position on, we can do that.
What does everybody think?
It's not agendized.
It's not
Yeah,
agendized.
yeah,
So
for the next agenda.
Yeah.
For the next meeting, yeah. Anybody in agreement on that?
To add a little I'd like to know. So as part of that, I'd like to fully understand what would be entailed in that request, not just the BDR, but like. What are we asking? What would we be asking the General Assembly to do, and any impact that would have on other legislation that's already been submitted by the city, I think would be helpful.
So
we can put forward some research and review on that and then bring that to you, Mr. Chair. If that's something that
yeah, I
you would
think
like
that
to
would
see on an
be,
agenda.
Yeah, that would be good, the environment in which this sits.
Yeah, I think especially since it's so critically important for the first project that we're reviewing. It would be great to know more information on how that process would work, who would put the BDR forward.
yeah,
And when.
and if it's this session or next session, but if the city council decided to seek that, I think it helps in the deal negotiating process.
Sure.
Just even to have that intention.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think that this,
Yeah, I'm sorry, my old role's kicking in. Probably shouldn't be discussing.
Yeah, we can
in
discuss
detail on future
too
agenda.
far. All I would be looking for would be areas that you need us to research in order to bring forward that agenda item. So I would say if you can position your statements as questions for research to staff and less of opining,
Sure.
that is helpful for us.
Keep that over me.
thank you, buddy. I don't want to go to open meeting like
Keep
that.
that open meeting law jail. Thank you.
So one other question I would like, if possible, referring to the letter that we all received as part of our packet. I would love some context around any review that's done on that. Because again, recognize, I'm not qualified to opine on this part of the code, but I do think that there were some points that were raised in there that were articulated very well. It'd be nice to know, be nice to get an update on the city's review of those. And if we want to do that in here, that's fine, but also I'm happy to have, if it's faster and more efficient to distribute that electronically, I'm happy to have it. I just don't know from a public meeting standpoint, if I'm asking you for it, it probably does need to come back here.
We can take that under consideration. We'll have a legal analysis done and then we can determine if it needs to come before the body or if we can send it just as transitory communication in response.
If there's anything new to distribute to us for our information, love to hear about what's going on with the Harrah's activity.
Okay, hopefully we will have an update.
Any other agenda items? Jay, anything for you?
No, I think we've covered it all today.
All right, we'll close item E. We'll move into F to see if there's any public comment.
Mr. Chair, you have none in the room. I'll ask any attendees to raise their hand. You have public comment from Tyler Jensen. I will unmute you at this time, Tyler, and your time will begin. You do have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Allowing me to, hi, thank you for allowing me to comment. Just want to commend this board and everybody that's part of it for being part of this. I think this is very important for the city of Reno, and discussing large economic projects such as this is a vital piece. I look forward to tracking this board regularly moving forward.
Thanks, Tyler. Anybody else online?
Mr. Chair, I'm seeing no further attendees that wish to speak.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll also say we received 2 written public comment. One was the letter, another one was added. They're both in the packet and posted online.
All right. I got a motion to adjourn,
Move to adjourn.
second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.